Sovereign Dao. Wang Wei watched the battle and was not surprised by the outcome. According to his calculations, Xianxia had a maximum of 2-leaf strength, slightly weaker than Ao Tianyi's maximum output of 3-leaf if he went all out, hence the reason she is fourth. As for Tong Ruobing, she has the potential to reach the same level of strength with her talisman rune body, but only untapped potential. Currently, she has not even reached the 1-leaf immortal venerable level. Maybe she could barely reach that realm's power through some harsh sacrifice. The celestial race is a blessed one, thought as he analyzed the strength Xianxia displayed. He could also divine information about how they use Qi by watching her use the destruction Qi. They had many advantages from Tier 1 to Tier 10, especially in the Great Emperor realm. For example, if a celestial race only achieved first-class Emperor, they could create Heaven Immortal Qi to grant them Eternal Emperor's battle prowess in Tier 10. Xianxia was the first to exit the pagoda, and with a calm demeanor, she took her seat. Despite her victory, she was not too happy as she could also sense Tong Ruobing's potential. With such strength and potential, she is not even the best heaven chosen from the myriad Emperor world. She then gazed at Wang Wei. She knew that a Dao Overlord was a sign of intelligence and strength. Although people know Overlord for their intelligence and luck, their strengths are nothing to ignore. The very reason Heavenly Dao tested them was that their Daos were inherently too powerful. Let's see if I can gather more information before I make a decision. Tong Ruobing followed a few minutes after her. And as soon as she exited the pagoda, Mu Lei flew to her. Young Lady Tong, are you all right? Do you need any help? No need since I was not injured, she replied with a brilliant smile. But I do appreciate the offer. As long as you are okay. Tong Ruobing briefly chatted with Mu Lei before returning to her seat, waiting for the next competition. I need to increase my strength. I cannot rush my bond with the Origin Talisman. However, I can enter the Saint Realm as quickly as possible. With a domain, my strength should reach another level. Who is coming next? Asked Lord Spirit with a slightly raised voice, obviously elated by the battle prowess displayed so far. I want a challenge, said Shi Rulin. And my opponent is you. She declared as she pointed. I refused, replied Wang Wei. Why? She asked in a pampering manner as if she was wronged. I've been in the spotlight too much. Challenge someone else. As he said that, his head shook to point to Chu Luo next to him, while his face showed he was not doing anything. Fine, I challenge number 1 over there. You are not my opponent, Chu Luo said calmly. He, an arrogant one. Do you accept my challenge or not? Asked Shi Rulin. As you wish, said Chu Luo before flying to the sky. Wang Wei wanted to warn him not to reveal his 9-extremity foundation but stopped himself. Firstly, Chu Luo will most like not to listen to his warning, especially without any specific explanation. Secondly, if the latter revealed his foundation, it would benefit Wang Wei as the attention would no longer be on him. He did not want to reveal his 9-extremity foundation, so he's been careful since these people's arrival. The only problem is that Chu Luo and possibly Lord Spirit know of its existence after he used some of its power in his fight against Yi Tuizi. So, he could only hope those two would keep their mouths shut. After getting into position, the two began their battle. Chu Luo did not waste time as he went for a powerful attack. Sword of Fate, a gray sword appeared before him. Then it rushed toward Shi Rulin with absolute speed. The sword had the power to annihilate fate, similar to Wang Wei's Fate Annihilation Fist. The 9-extremity foundation? Thought Shi Rulin as she sensed the horror of this attack. She knew she could not survive under an attack compared to a Dao ancestor. So, she acted rapidly as a weird aura emanated from her body. Then the attack's power drastically decreased. Shi Rulin then punched the sword. Bang! They confronted for a few seconds before she repelled it. The upper-seated players squinted their eyes after seeing Chu Luo's attack. Knowledge about the 9-extremity foundation is more common in the Eternal Ascension world, so they knew about it. Many wanted to establish the best foundation for cultivation before proving the Dao. Unfortunately, reincarnation was troublesome, and it was not easy to understand existence. The best way to acquire this foundation is to go to the lower dimension. Unfortunately, the problem of resources often limits the success rate. Furthermore, given the world's current political situation, being too talented and powerful was not a good thing. On the contrary, it invited the wrong kind of attention. But these heaven-chosens had no time to lament the situation of the upper dimension. They came here not only to acquire the deceiving heaven longevity art but also to observe and take notes of extraordinary geniuses of the lower dimension. They had to determine possible candidates that could cause the upcoming changes in the entire Eternal Ascension world. And someone with such a powerful foundation instantly became at the top of their list of candidates. Wang Wei secretly smiled as he sensed the slight change in the upper-seated player's demeanor after Chu Luo revealed his ability. Although he knew he would not entirely be ignored, he was satisfied as long as he was not the primary suspect. This brief gap was enough for the changes to finish and for him to do many things. Meanwhile, Chu Luo frowned in the air. He did not care about the changes on the ground. He felt his strength had drastically decreased. He went from 3-root Dao Ancestor to 3-leaf Immortal Venerable. Such a large gap was remarkable. So he looked at Shirulan. My Emperor Bone does not just allow me to become an emperor, it's a physique that trains a powerful emperor. So, it helps me with tempering my body, comprehending laws and even tempering my Dao heart, she explained. And when I combine it with my Dao, some interesting ability appeared. A large image appeared behind Shirulan. It was an enormous image of her sitting on a throne, looking at myriad things in existence with disdain. She had the aura of a sovereign who ruled above all myriad Daos. A vision ability, commented Chu Luo. Correct. It's called Sovereign's Minister. It can force all my opponents to a cultivation stage at least one realm below me. Chu Luo could immediately analyze how scary such a divine ability was. The only way for someone to defeat Shirulan is to have the ability to skip the realm for battles. And given she also has the same capability, it's challenging to accomplish. In the lower stages of cultivation, it's still possible to defeat her. A monstrous genius could accomplish this feat, however, when strength reaches the immortal tier, where one leaf is the difference between heaven and earth, it's nigh impossible to defeat her. Chu Luo raised his hand to create a mirror, Heaven Mirror. Through the mirror he saw numerous information and secrets of heaven and earth, focusing on Shirulan's ability. He then knew he could not avoid this technique or nulled it because Emperor Bone, as a physique, could acquire certain authority or power of a great emperor if the owner developed it to the extreme. And Shirulan used her authority to make the technique applicable to all mortals, even those with immortal level strength. She also made it almost impossible to nullify. Chu Luo frowned slightly as the mirror continued providing him with information. Then he created a jade seal in the shape of a dragon. Sovereign seal, muttered Shirulan with squinted eyes. Meanwhile, Chu Luo fused the seal into his sea of consciousness, and instantly, his aura elevated to 4-leaf Immortal, the same strength as Shirulan. You're a worthy opponent, commented Shirulan. The flaw of her technique is that it worked on the concept that she is a sovereign, and other people, as her minister, are below her. But if someone could acquire the aura/spirit of a sovereign and have sufficient strength, they can nullify some of the power of her ability and achieve the same cultivation realm as her. And not everyone can do that. Ever since I last fought Xianxia a few 100,000 years ago, I've never met someone who could nullify my ability. However, you are still destined to lose. I've never lost a battle in the same realm, even to him. Shirulan was not exaggerating. Even Xianxia did not defeat her in their battle. He only gave up after he felt it would be a hassle to continue fighting. Nevertheless, she has never lost. There is a first time for everything, Chu Luo replied calmly. Well, see, said Shirulan as she went on the offensive. The flaw. 9 golden rings appeared behind Shirulan, forming the shape of a circle. They floated behind her like they were wings. And as soon as they appeared, her aura increased, and the blood energy in her body suddenly increased, creating an area of intense yang energy that could be felt dozens of meters away. Shirulan had activated a unique technique called the Sovereign Tyrant Body that people with Emperor Bone could only cultivate. She cultivated this technique by condensing blood energy in the shape of the rings behind her. There were 12 rings, and each subsequent one required more time, energy and resources to condense. The Sovereign Tyrant Body was a unique technique that allowed its user to open the Gate of Power after condensing the 11th ring and the Gate of Flesh after condensing the last one. However, this technique had a significant flaw as it was an active body refining technique. When Shirulan did not activate the rings, her body was relatively weaker. It was still powerful but not nearly as powerful as when she activated them. As such, she can get assassinated a lot easier before she activates the rings. Luckily, Shirulan used some other techniques to somewhat compensate for the deficiency, which will also disappear after opening the Gate of Power. Shirulan rushed toward Chu Luo to punch him. Bang! She flew back a few dozen meters. She lost in a direct confrontation and she immediately knew the reason. Her ability forced her opponent to have the same stats as her. However, Chu Luo was better at controlling his strength. As such, with the exact stats he could exert more power than her. Nevertheless, she did not stop attacking after one confrontation. No, she kept rushing at him with the objective of a fist-to-fist brawl. With each attack she lost, and Chu Luo would go on the offensive to punch her in the stomach, ribs, face and everywhere else. It was a one-sided beating. Shi Rulin planned to evolve amid battle and reach the same level of control as her opponent. She did the same tactic during her battle with Xiao Tiandi. Regrettably, she soon realized the two were in entirely different realms regarding force control. If she wanted to reach his level, she would need years, and even then she might fail. Let's change tactic. Shi Rulin decided to stop the fleshly body confrontation and used her other powers. She had lost in this confrontation. Nevertheless, excitement emanated from her eyes as she knew she had met a worthy opponent. A golden aura covered her body as the natural pressure she released suddenly increased. All the participants could tell she had gotten stronger, and people like Wang Wei, Chu Luo, Zhang Yuqing, Monk Wuji, and Xiao Tiandi could tell her strength had increased from the middle of four-leaf to the peak. Heart of invincibility, commented Chu Luo. Exactly. Chu Luo knew of this state of mind that could boost battle since he cultivated one in his first life. Cultivators can cultivate an invincible heart through constant fighting and defeating all opponents, increasing their power in battles. Invincible heart has levels. For example, all the people Chu Luo defeated were no match for him in the first place, so his invincible heart had little effect on the boost it granted. Meanwhile, Shi Rulin had to defeat many of her peers, people as talented, if not more than her. As such, her invincible heart gave her a significant boost. It's a shame you're going to lose your invincible heart after this battle, Chu Luo commented with a sneer. After his first failure to pass the outlaw trial, he lost his invincible heart. And as long as Shi Rulin lost this fight, the same will happen to her. We will see, replied Shi Rulin with a big grin. Then, golden flames appeared on her body before she punched. Sovereign flame, the golden flame engulfed half of the sky. However, Chu Luo remained calm. He waved his hand to manifest a cauldron. The cauldron's top then opened to release an ocean of black water that cancelled out the flame. Shi Rulin raised her hands to manifest two golden bolts of lightning swish. She threw them so hard that they traveled a few million faster than light. The bolts were powerful and contained a suppressive power even more mighty than a gravity trillion times of a planet similar to Earth. Regrettably, her opponent responded rapidly and with ease. Silver chains suddenly appeared and they caught the bolts. Anti-lightning chains? No, but also anti-sovereign powers. Creation Dao is too versatile in battle. Despite this, she would not give up. She had cultivated her sovereign Dao to a high level where it could compete with outlaw Daos. She wanted to lord over all laws and concepts. She wanted everything between heaven and earth to bow to her, including Grand Dao itself. With an unwavering fighting intent, Shi Rulin rushed toward her opponent. When she was closed, she controlled her law to use one of her most potent spells. The court's corruption. Chu Luo's face changed as he wanted to react and move out of the way. It was too late. A sword with dragon designs on the hill manifested in Shi Rulin's hand, and she slashed him. Chu Luo crossed his arm to defend himself, but the attack's potency sent him crashing to the ground, destroying many buildings. He only took a few seconds to get back up, but he still had a scar across his arms and small parts of his chest. His white robe was tainted by blood. With a serious look, he watched Shi Rulin in the sky. Corruption. Her attack momentarily corrupted my laws, rendering them useless for a brief moment. Chu Luo was instantly unhappy, not because he suffered injuries at the hands of a person much weaker than him, but because this technique was the ban of his creation Dao that was inherently flawed. As he sensed his body, he could feel some trace of corruption remaining inside his body. Then, a cauldron appeared before him before a few pills popped out from the inside. After ingesting them, his injured healed at speed visible to the naked eye. I know the flaw in your creation Dao, Shi Rulin said. You can only create items with attributes but not the attributes themselves. This is why you did not create the black water to extinguish my sovereign flame. You had to create a cauldron that could make water. Ever since Shi Rulin knew her opponent controlled an outlaw Dao without the aura of a Dao overlord, she knew there would be some restrictions and was on the lookout for them. After seeing the method he used to deal with the flame, she had her suspicions. However, she confirmed her theory when he used those pills to heal his injuries. If Chu Luo was an overlord, he could just create a pill with healing properties instead of creating a cauldron that made healing pills. And if he could use his creation Dao at an even higher level, he should be able to create the concept of healing to help with his injuries. However, when he used the power of other purely conceptual laws, he also had to create a weapon with the attribute of the concept he wanted to utilize. For example, the sort of fate attack he used. That attack was not a choice, but Chu Luo could not directly create fate-related techniques. He can only create weapons with fate-related powers, thus limited in the scope of what he can accomplish with his creation Dao. So what? Replied Chu Luo, very annoyed. The flaw in his Dao was a sore spot in his heart. It reminded him of all his failures, how he disappointed his parents' efforts, and how he had to watch them sacrifice so much for him in vain. Supreme Outlaw Dao is Supreme Outlaw Dao. No matter the restriction, it is still better than anything you have or will ever have. And I will show its power to you. Haha, I would love to see how. Domain activation. Chu Luo was in the incarnation realm, and his domain C had evolved into a towering tree and gave birth to the fruit of laws. So, he had a powerful domain to boost his power. A domain? I have one too, said Shirulin with laughter as she activated hers. Then the sky suddenly split into two colors, one golden and the other a misty white and grayish color. A domain confrontation had started. The participants watched with great attention, except for Xiao Qiandi, who only watched with half his eyes closed. Wang Wei also paid great attention since there was some benefit to gather. Empyrean had the power of creation, at the very least life creation. And to reach that realm, great emperors did not require an understanding of creation Dao beforehand. However, knowledge on the subject drastically increased the success rate of becoming an Empyrean. So, he wanted to use this opportunity to learn something from Chu Luo and prepare his path to becoming an Empyrean. D stages. The participants could see two spheres wrestling in the sky, one white-gray and the other golden. Their clashes sent powerful shockwaves throughout the entire small world where the trial took place, forcing everyone to generate shields to protect themselves. On each side of a sphere, Chu Luo and Shirulin looked at each other. The clash of their domains was to determine who had absolute control over the environment and whose domain would give the most significant boosts. At first, the two spheres appeared equal, but after a few minutes of confrontation, the white area began to overwhelm the others. Shirulin gritted her teeth as she mobilized her spiritual strength, qi and law to help sustain her domain. Unfortunately, since Chu Luo outclassed her in the law department, his domain was the victor. As such, he took over 3/4 of the sky and left the rest for Shirulin to barely defend herself. Creation domain, myriad Dao blade work. Chu Luo waved his hand, and millions of swords appeared in his domain. There were many swords with different attributes. Flame sword, thunder sword, sword of death, sword of time, sword of karma, etc. He created each sword with a different attribute before dropping them on his opponent. Shirulin's face changed as she reacted. Dragon protection. Countless dragons appeared in her domain, covering her. Unfortunately, the swords destroyed anything that stood in their way. Some dragons were burned, some aged and died, and some underwent samsara. They died in diverse ways, but they all still died. So, Shirulin acted to increase her power. Myriad race protection. She summoned not only dragons but races like phoenixes, rocks, and other demonic races. Pish. A sword pierced her shoulder before igniting into a red flame. She could even sense the flame was using her karmic sin as fuel. Shirulin hurriedly used the technique, Sovereign's Pride. As a sovereign, she would never apologize for her actions. No matter how atrocious, her pride transcended karma. As a sovereign, karma did not affect her. Shirulin created this technique to deal with karma-based attacks. The flame extinguished and she mobilized her blood energy to heal the damage. At the same time, she also focused on the swords that seemed infinite. World's protection. As a ruler above the mundane and extraordinary, all sentient beings worshipped and strived to protect her. As such, it is their duty to protect her. A glass bead the size of a football field appeared in Shirulin's domain. It was an entire world at least the size of a few billion galaxies. The glass bead blocked 90% of the upcoming swords while Shirulin punched the others with her fleshly body. Then she went on the offensive. Boom. Sovereign's fury. With one punch, a terrifying pressure emanated from her. Then, the golden side of domain suddenly turned darker as clouds manifested before dropping lightning bolts on Chu Luo. It was as if the heavens itself was angry and wanted to punish. A sovereign's fury eclipses the heaven, thought Chu Luo before sneering. He waved his hand to create a round shield with a black tortoise engraving. The shield then released a force field that protected its creator and the domain. Chu Luo then created another sword, a space-time sword. The sword pierced the marble, creating cracks before exploding. Although it appeared as if it was just an ordinary marble destroyed, the participants could see an entire world in shambles. The sword generated a powerful wave of spacetime energy that tore apart the entire world inside the marble. Then the sword headed toward Shirulin, who tried to evade. In her domain, Shirulin is a god and can bend reality at will. So, she should be able to teleport anywhere her domain touched. Unfortunately, she could not outrun space and time, at least not the one Chuluo controls. Subsequently, Shirulin dodged the sword, which cut off her right hand. What's more, the cut-off arm instantly aged before disappearing. She then felt a will preventing her healing capabilities. 7th stage Duyi realm? Luckily, it appears his application of it is lacking. The Duyi realm is somewhat rare in the lower dimension but not so much in the upper dimension as there is more knowledge and even classification. There are 9 stages, each increasing strength and the 10% probability of casting the Dao will. Moreover, the higher the stage, the more powerful Dao will a great emperor can cast. The stages can be increased through repeated training or by making more than one cultivation stage unique. Shirulin only had a 5th stage Duyi realm. Nevertheless, she had more knowledge and control of it than Chuluo. So, he removed the latter's power before focusing on the spatial temporal energy remaining on her body that was trying to age the rest of her body. Shirulin gritted her teeth to create a few more world marbles to prevent her opponent from taking advantage of her weakness. Her face turned pale in the process, but she gritted her teeth. Then she mobilized one aspect of her sovereign Dao, control. She used the law of control to control the energy in her body and remove it. She wanted to control and use it for her own use. Unfortunately, this power had Chuluo's imprint, and she could not control it unless she overpowered him. The rings behind Shirulin shone as her blood energy activated, instantly growing another arm. Meanwhile, Chuluo watched as his swords destroyed world after world. Let's end this, he thought. What is a sovereign without its people, its citizen, to rule over? Chuluo said as he created an ordinary sword. As soon as the sword appeared, everyone could feel it was the embodiment of the people's wish, of their desire to reject the power of any ruler. Then the sword, which embodied rejection of monarchy and rebellion, flew toward Shirulin, making her face change. She knew she would lose if that attack hit, as it was the antithesis of her Dao. So, she activated the court corruption spell to affect Chuluo's laws. And for a moment it worked. His domain shook and it appeared it would shrink. However, Chuluo reacted in time by creating a pen full of righteous chi. He used the power of righteousness to counter Shirulin's corruption. The people's sword easily pierced through all of Shirulin's techniques before stopping an inch before her throat. She looked at me with gritted teeth without saying anything. Then the sword moved slightly, drawing blood from her neck. Fine, I lose. Crack. Shirulin heard a sword indicating her invincible heart was shattered. Her mighty and invincible aura rapidly declined. She looked directly into Chuluo's eyes and muttered, "So, this is my path forward. Find a way to be both a sovereign of the people and an independent sovereign not bound by heaven and earth." Shirulin entered a brief state of enlightenment, and her aura sublimated. Upon completion, she sensed her path of achieving 5-leaf Immortal Venerable was not far. Wang Wei watched the battle with great concentration. He watched every move Chuluo made, storing the latter's understanding and control of creation Dao for later in his cultivation journey. He knew he would not have to worry much about his breakthrough in the Empyrean realm after this battle. Wang Wei also paid attention to Shirulin. Her Emperor Bone's ability reminded him of Di Tian's pseudo-domain. The main difference was Di Tian could bring people on the same realm as him. The weakness is that realm was not the same as the strength. Most heaven-chosen could fight above their realms. So, reducing their realms could indeed drastically increase them. However, Shirulin's ability will bring them the same strength, meaning stats like chi, fleshly body, spiritual strength, etc. The only thing she could not reduce was a person's control or understanding of laws. She can control the level of destruction their technique or laws could make for Leaf, but not the subtle or ingenious applications. This is why she lost this battle. Another difference between these two techniques was that Di Tian's domain could be avoided, nullified, or countered. However, Shirulin's ability seemed to involve order power backed by the power of a great emperor. So, unless a mortal has the strength of a great emperor, they cannot nullify her ability. The only way to defeat Shirulin is to beat her in the same realm. I could probably use my order-disorder law to recreate their ability, thought Wang Wei. Of course, he knew his method would, at best, be on the same level as Di Tian's. He could never reach Shirulin's level unless he had reached the 10th extremity foundation. But at that point he has the strength of a great emperor. Why would he need to use this technique? No, it can be useful. If the technique could work on a great emperor, I could lower their cultivation realm to the same as me and easily defeat them. If he had the 10-extremity foundation and load a third-class emperor's realm to the quasi-emperor realm, he would easily slaughter the latter. Wang Wei mentally shook his head as he realized such a technique was too impractical given all the requirements to be useful. The two physiques history. Chu Luo's fighting style seems to be using his opponent's opposite Dao to crush them, observed Wang Wei during the battle. With how diverse creation Dao was, he understood why this fighting method was used. However, it would not work for him since he fused his opposite, freedom, into his fate Dao. And even if he did, this tactic would not work on him since his Dao tree turned silver. At best, Chu Luo could be equal if he used freedom Dao against him. Chu Luo is the victor, announced Lord Spirit with evident joy in his tone. While people wondered why the happiness, only Lord Spirit knew the exact reason. According to the agreement his master made, as long as Shi Rulin and Xiao Qiandi lost a battle, they could expel all the upper-seeded players back to the upper dimension, not allowing them to participate in the final part of this trial. Now one of the two was defeated. Wang Wei, don't let me down, thought Lord Spirit. Who wants to go next? Me. Everyone looked up to see Shi Rulin was the one who answered. Lady Shi, you want to challenge again? Yes, and this time, I'm challenging Wang Wei. I refuse, said Wang Wei immediately. What? Are you looking down on me? No, it's because your ability is too disgusting. Shi Rulin's lips twitched. This was not the first time someone had said that about her ability. Fine, you don't have to fight me. But show me how you would deal with my ability. What method you would use to have the same cultivation realm as me. Shi Rulin felt that Wang Wei should have a method similar to Chu Luo that would allow him to keep the same strength as her, and she wanted to know. Meanwhile, Wang Wei pondered for a moment before agreeing. The image of a purple star appeared above Wang Wei, illuminating the surrounding. The star was noble, mighty, and released the aura of a born ruler. The East Purple Star, also known as the Sovereign Star, muttered Shi Rulin. She could tell the latter used his fate Dao to change his fate to that of a sovereign. With this method, she would not be able to suppress him to a realm below her. That should work, Shi Rulin said before looking at Ji Lanfang and the other lower-seated players. Then she flew back to her seat. Although she wanted to ask them the same question, she did not. These people's strengths were too weak compared to hers. Ji Lanfang was the only one with one leaf strength, while the rest only had the potential to reach that level. Even if they had a method, they would still be suppressed because of the vast difference. And Shi Rulin was correct in that they thought of a way in case they needed to fight her. Ji Lanfang thought of using all the King Dao swordsmanships he knew to create the aura of a sovereign. Tong Ruobing would use an aura-changing talisman to acquire the bearing of a ruler. Shi Qian could connect to the karma of mortals in her homeworld, forcing them to give her the position of a sovereign. Meanwhile, Jinhu Hua was technically a ruler. The three-legged crows were the royal family of the Golden Crow race, so she had the aura of a sovereign. Now that everything is settled, who is the next? Lord Spirit did not finish his words as a terrible sound echoed in the lobby, forcing everyone to hold their ears. Everyone then looked in Xiao Tian's direction to see a talisman floating before him, which was the noise source. You know the deal, said a female voice from the talisman. The sound won't stop until you move. The terrible sound ended, but that's because Xiao Qiandi was now the only person who could hear it. His mouth twitched in aggravation. This was not the first time his master had done something similar to motivate him. And he knew the talisman would not stop no matter what method he tried. And Xiao Qiandi could not destroy it even if he could somehow use the power of a great emperor. Damn it, all right, he said as he stood up, his eyes still a little closed. He looked around at the others before his eyes stopped on Wang Wei. I guess it's you. Let's get this over with. Wang Wei frowned. Young Master Wang Wei, please not reject, said Lord Spirit. Wang Wei gave him a look and realized there was something more. Then, his senses told him to fight the latter as it would benefit him. Fine, he responded before flying into the sky as Xiao Qiandi followed him. They looked at each for a few seconds. For some odd and unexplainable reason, I don't like you, suddenly commented Xiao Qiandi. Many people don't like me. It could be because I'm more handsome than them, more powerful, savvier, and has a hotter wife. Pick one and it will be enough. Xiao Qiandi was speechless. His appearance was not that bad and he just looked off because he did not care for his appearance. As for being more powerful, no one in the younger generation has defeated him, including Zhang Yuqing and Man Wuji. When it comes to Dao Companion, he had his beautiful master. Although they were not together, he firmly believed it was only a matter of time. The only thing he could give the latter was savvy since he is an overlord, but as a person born with the innate Tao Source physique, he did not think he would lose in the savvy department. No, it's not these reasons. I just don't like you for some reason. Well, honestly, I feel the same, replied Wang Wei, who knew the reason for their dislikes. The innate Tao Source physique and innate Paragon Soul are often called destined enemies. Long ago, Xiao Tiandi's physique was considered the best for cultivation. However, that was until innate Paragon Souls appeared, which was both an acquired and innate physique. Some people can be born with an innate Paragon Soul, or a Paragon could use countless Paragon-level resources similar to World Essence to nourish an unborn child in the womb. However, few people do these since these resources are precious even to Paragons, and using them on an unborn child is a waste. Another reason is the high level of success. More often than not, the child will be unable to properly absorb these resources and fail to elevate their newborn soul to that level. And there is also a chance of overpowering the child's soul, causing irreparable damage. Nevertheless, the first person to ever have an innate Paragon soul got through acquired means, and his name was Paragon Red Dust. Red Dust was conceived in a time of the Eternal Ascension world when a man with the title of Truth Seeker reigned supreme. He was a boundless Paragon with unmatched power. Truth Seeker Paragon lived in a relatively earlier era of the Eternal Ascension world, making him quite ancient taking into account modern times. And his time there were few Paragons, let alone boundless. Nevertheless, he was still the most powerful of his peers, suppressing an entire era. As a result, the only thing Truth Seeker wanted was an opponent on par with him. And he feared this day would never come, until a pregnant woman approached him with a deal. The woman told him if he gave him the necessary resources, he could cultivate a child with an acquired talent on par with Truth Seeker's innate Tao Source physique. Intrigued, the Paragon agreed, hence Red Dust was born, the first person with an innate Paragon soul. Truth Seeker taught the child everything he knew and also gave him the resources he needed to reach the same realm as him. This was not the first time he had done such a thing since he always wanted someone who could give him a challenge. Unfortunately, things proceeded beyond his calculations. Truth Seeker was a prideful and arrogant man. He wanted someone who could give him a worthy challenge, but he could also defeat whenever he pleased. Unfortunately, Red Dust was his equal in every way possible. Even when he tried his best, he could not defeat the latter, a fact that shattered his pride. On the other hand, Red Dust was also not happy with the outcome of their battle. His dream or goal since childhood was to surpass his adoptive father. Yet, no matter what he tried, the result was a stalemate. Then, these two boundless Paragons began to compete in other things like alchemy, talisman, array, etc. With their physique's terrifying comprehension, they could excel at everything they tried. Regrettably, the result was always a stalemate. At this point in their life, their competition had changed their relationship. They grew to hate/despise each other. So, they decided at one last attempt to reincarnate with their physique, ensure they were born in the same generation and compete for the heaven will. After these two decided on the competition, they disappeared to this day. No one knew who was the final winner. Heavenly Tao recognized the innate Paragon soul as a physique that could balance out the innate Tao Source physique and just grant it to specific individuals. However, Truth Seeker and Red Dust Paragons were inherited by the future owner of their physique. So, as long as the two showed up in the same generation, they would often compete, trying to surpass the other. Of course, Wang Wei was not influenced by this will. He had a disdain for Xiao Qiandi for another reason. One he had not discovered yet but felt was related to his overall demeanor. Hopefully he could find the reason during their battle. Grand Mist Wheel. Alright, let's get this over with, said Xiao Qiandi. Don't expect me to go easy on you. That's my line, replied Wang Wei before rushing to his opponent. He immediately appeared in front of Xiao Qiandi and punched him. Boom. So fast, was the last thought of Xiao Qiandi before flying away, ribs cracked and heart squished. Midway through his fly, a white flame appeared on his body, healing his injuries. Meanwhile, Wang Wei went on the offensive. He used his Fate Escape technique to fly at an unimaginable speed. He also used the tips he received from the Rainbow Emperor. He used the Rabbit Zodiac to boost his strength further. He used the Sheep Zodiac, which granted him dominance of the elements. And with this dominance he used lightning, wind, light and space-time to boost his strength further. So, with a speed that appeared as if he had teleported, he appeared before Xiao Qiandi. Bang! He exploded the latter's head with one punch. How is he so fast that I can't even react? Thought Xiao Qiandi as his body reformed. I need to do something or I will spend this fight in mystery. Bang! His entire upper body exploded in a pool of blood. However, Xiaoqindi regenerated like a phoenix with a bright white flame. And as this time things were different, his aura drastically changed. It went up from the 6-leaf Immortal Venerable to 9-leaf, making Wang Wei frown. A secret technique? Thought Wang Wei as he analyzed his opponent. Meanwhile, Xiaoqindi raised his hand to shoot a yellow beam, forcing Wang Wei to dodge. Unfortunately, he was not fast enough, and his right hand was gone as if it had never existed. The power of Grand Mist. It's been a while since I last saw it, he said calmly. During the Heaven-Chosen selection trial at the Academy, Lin Fan used Grand Mist in his battle against Suya. Grand Mist is considered one of the first powers or energy that existed at the beginning of the universe. It is a manifestation of chaos. So, it can return anything it touched back to chaos. Grand Mist is divided into Yin and Yang. The Yin side is referred to as Final Grand Mist and has the power of erasure. It returns things to their original state. Meanwhile, Yang Grand Mist is called Cosmos Grand Mist and is used to mold chaos into all matter. It molds chaos into all things in existence. Cultivators must condense a Grand Mist wheel in their sea of consciousness to enter the Empyrean realm. Through this wheel, they can control Cosmos Grand Mist to create life and other things. Many thoughts flashed in Wang Wei's mind as he looked at his missing arm. Then, a purple flame appeared on the missing arm, burning off the power of Grand Mist with the chaos flame in his heart. Xiaoqindi did not give his opponent time to breathe. He turned his final Grand Mist into a sword that resembled a lightsaber. Then he rushed toward Wang Wei to slash him. Oddly though, the opponent easily dodged his attack. With his 9-leaf Immortal Venerable strength, he should be able to overwhelm the latter with his sheer speed, just like he suffered previously. Swish, swish, swish. Xiaoqindi swung his sword more than 1,000,000 times in less than a second. But not one of his attacks touched his opponent. So he condensed the Grand Mist sword into a bomb, spreading its attack in a wide area. However, Wang Wei moved quickly out of the attack's range. Xiaoqindi paused as he looked at Wang Wei. You're using the Battle Maniac Paragon's ultimate evasion technique. So, you've noticed. I've read about it in books. I thought it was a legend. It is said after creating this method, he has never lost a battle in his life. Well, it's true, Wang Wei replied. The ultimate evasion technique allowed him to synchronize his body to his opponent's aura, energy signature, spiritual strength, and laws. After the synchronization, his body will naturally evade all the opponent's attacks. No matter the attack, his body would move on its own to evade. It was as if it was allergic to everything about his opponent and would naturally avoid it. After creating and mastering this technique, Battle Maniac never lost a battle. It did not mean he was invincible, but he never suffered defeat. Of course, it was not only because of this technique. The flaw of this method is to use overwhelming speed to counter it. However, as a peak paragon, Battle Maniac was on the top echelon regarding speed in all the paragon in the universe. So, he never met someone who could overwhelm him with speed. Additionally, this technique had higher levels. For example, Wang Wei also synchronized with Xiao Tiandi's fate and karma to aid him in his evasion. For the level of this technique, he needed to have some fate or karmic connection with Xiao Tiandi, and he did. Xiao Tiandi's master was Su Junyao. The woman Wang Wei had a love-fate connection besides Wu Hong. Wang Wei had to sigh at how wonderful fate could be. Is it a coincidence that he met him now? Most likely no. Domain expansion, Grand Mist erasure. Xiao Tiandi controlled the entire area and filled it with Grand Mist, not giving any room for Wang Wei to dodge. As such, he surrounded himself with a purple flame, protecting himself. At the same time, he finally figured out the secret technique the latter used. He borrowed the power of an alternate version of himself, a variant of himself that failed in accomplishing the 9-extremity foundation and ended up with 9-leaf Immortal Venerable strength. What a wonderful secret technique. It's a shame I cannot use it. Based on his analysis, divination, and calculator, Heavenly Tao only allowed cultivators to access parallel timelines in the upper dimension. Although only paragons should be able to travel or access parallel timelines, Xiao Tiandi's secret technique granted the ability to borrow strength from his parallel self, with the only limitation that he could not acquire the power of Tao Ancestor. So, 9-leaf was the limit he could achieve. Xiaoqindi observed his opponent with a frown, rapidly calculating the best attack mode. Secret technique, Rock Infinite Speed. 2 large energy wings appeared behind him, while the phantom of a bird or fish manifested behind him. It was the image of a rock. Rocks are known as one of the fastest creatures in the universe. With this technique, Xiao Tiandi's speed approached the infinity domain, a realm of speed that at least one root Tao ancestor can reach. As a comparison, A 2-root Dao ancestor has a base speed of 20 times infinity. With this speed, Wang Wei's mind could perceive Xiao Tiandis' movement. After all, he is connected to his other clones to existence, and technically has the reflex of a 2-root Dao ancestor. However, his main body, with only 6 leaf, cannot move in time to evade. Bang! Xiao Tiandi flew back with half of his body destroyed. Meanwhile, Wang Wei remained intact. At the last minute, he used the Pig Zodiac ability to absorb the attack and redirected it before his opponent could even react. Xiao Tiandi frowned as he felt something was wrong. He should not be able to absorb an attack approaching 1-root Dao ancestor. Is he secretly a 9-extremity foundation? He thought of how Wang Wei previously hid his battle with Ao Tianyi, making him a little suspicious. So, he used another technique to manifest a third eye on his forehead. He stored the power in his acupoints? That would make sense. I also sensed Devour Law. While Xiao Tiandi analyzed the situation, his body rapidly regenerated, making Wang Wei frown as he also detected something. I thought his main Dao was Lesser Chaos. But now, I know his main Dao is Dream. He converted his injury into a dream. So, it was as if they never occurred. Wang Wei always knew there were 2 different Chaos Dao, but he never knew the exact classification until he received Ao Tianyi's memories. Lesser Chaos Dao referred to the Dao Lin Fan cultivated before he became an outlaw. Lesser Chaos Dao directly cultivates Chaos Law, which involves things like Grand Mist, sublaws like Destruction, Creation, Absolute Beginning and Absolute End, Origin and others. Meanwhile, Great Chaos Dao is when cultivated decided to cultivate all 3,800 primary Daos to a high level before fusing them. This Dao is on the path of becoming nigh omnipotent. It's the Dao of mastering all concepts, laws and rules. It's the Dao of becoming the embodiment of all things in existence. Of course, both Daos are outlaws, but people with the absolute chaos physique and other exceptional physiques can cultivate lesser chaos Dao without a problem. Meanwhile, great chaos Dao is an outlaw to everyone. Wang Wei snapped his finger. Order, no secret technique. Immediately, Xiao Tiandi lost all his strength, returning to his original power. Wang Wei instantly appeared before him and held him by his throat, even sealing all his strength. I know why I didn't like him and I could use it to my advantage. The only issue is whether it was worth the risk. Disdain. Thanks to Janish and many others who donated gifts, they sponsored this chapter. Wang Wei scanned Xiao Tiandis' body with his divine sense and almost smacked his lips. He could feel a terrifying power preventing anyone from accessing Xiao Tiandis' physique. The power protected his blood and even his hair and teeth. Ignoring the latter's attempt to get rid of his seal, Wang Wei looked at Lord Spirit, who happily announced he was the winner. Finally, Wang Wei released Xiao Tiandi from his grip. As the winner of this battle, he won a great deal of destiny, even more than he anticipated. Furthermore, Wang Wei could feel that a vision was about to appear due to his innate Paragon soul defeating the innate Dao Source physique. He quickly calculated that it was one of the reasons he acquired so much destiny from Xiao Tiandi. Nevertheless, this was unimportant since he did not want the vision to appear as it could reveal his soul. So he quickly denied its appearance. He could sense some odd gaze from Lord Spirit, but he did not look back or explain anything. Instead, he looked directly into Xiao Tiandis' eyes and said, I know why I dislike you. You reek of laziness and depression. Despite having supposedly the greatest talent for cultivation, your willpower is so weak that it's pitiful. You know nothing about me, roared Xiao Tiandi. So, don't act as if you do. I don't need to know anything about you to know you seem to have given up. Shut up, he roared again, this time even louder as his voice echoed throughout the entire miniature world. Do you know what I've been through? Do you know how much I suffer, how much pressure I'm under? Xiao Tiandi replied with clenched hands. Before I started cultivating, life was beautiful. I was born with the most remarkable talent under heaven and earth, making everyone in my family proud and looking forward to my future. I was lucky to meet my master, who cared for and protected me. She was the only one who saw the real me, not the Xiao Tiandi with the innate Dao Source physique. However, everything changed when I began my cultivation journey and learned about the world. My talent was not a gift, it was a curse. Every time I made progress, every time I made an achievement, every time my reputation soared, I could feel it, the gaze of the 2 suns and 7 moons. And it was not a friendly gaze. They saw me as nothing but a nuisance, a problem that had to be dealt with eventually. They saw me as an eventual threat to their reign. So, in response, you made yourself smaller to not get their attention? You wasted your potential by wailing in self-pity, cursing at unfair the world was? asked Wang with a sneer and great disdain. He finally understood why Xiaotiandi did not even attempt the Nine Extremity Foundation or even try cultivating an outlaw Dao. Wang Wei guessed this was the excuse he used to not even enter the Dui realm since he could not sense its power on the ladder. I had no choice, quickly replied Xiaotiandi, his voice raised to the point of roaring again. This was the only way to survive and protect me, my family, and my master. I had to look unthreatened to them, I had to waste my potential. Wang Wei looked down at the other upper-seated players. He could sense fear, frustration, and unwillingness in Shi Ruolin and Xianxia. Even Ao Channy, who managed to regain some bearing, felt some emotions similar to this. Meanwhile, Zhang Yuqing gloated despite his face looking peaceful and normal, and Monk Wuji lowered his head, showing shame and regret. I finally understand why the upper and lower dimension is separated, Wang Wei said calmly. In the endless void there can only be 3,000 great emperors in each generation. NS quintillion upon quintillion of races competes for these spots. And usually only the best of the best gets to sit on the throne. Only the best have a chance at achieving eternity and escaping the shackles of death. Meanwhile, heaven wills is probably so common on the upper dimension that you treat it as an ordinary resource. With this mindset, without the pressure to be the absolute best, without the threat of death, the emperors you cultivate are ordinary, weak, underachievers, complacent, and weak-willed. Unfortunately, that zeitgeist has been passed down to you, the younger generation. What are you trying to say? Asked Xiaotiandi with gritted teeth. I bet there is a revolution against the so-called 2 suns and 7 moons you mentioned, and the main lead of it are the emperors from the lower dimension, am I right? Xiaotiandi did not answer, so Wang Wei sneered before continuing. These people know their struggle is futile, but they never give up. Even if they knew there was no hope, no future, and even if they knew they would suffer terrible consequences for their actions, they did not give up on trying to break the current situation. But you gave up. No, even worse, you didn't even try. The sneer on Wang Wei's face was simply disgusting to look at this point, and he had his reason to despise Xiaotiandi so much. The moment he learned about these 7 parasites and even the other 2 who might have surpassed the Paragon realm, he did not give up. Instead, he began to plan out how he would deal with the situation and find a way to break the game. His current words and actions were part of his plan. He wanted to instill the idea of rebellion into these people, hoping they could make some changes when they returned. As such, when he ascended, he would have allies and did not have to start from scratch. Even if these geniuses did not publicly revolt, his plan would succeed as long as they secretly supported the rebellion. And his target was also the lower dimension geniuses, as they were potential allies after they proved the Tao and ascended to the eternal ascension world. The only issue was his words would bring more attention to himself from these parasites. However, after calculating the pros and cons of the current situation, Wang Wei decided the risks were worth it. You don't understand, yelled Xiaotiandi, his voice full of despair. I had to protect my master. Did she ask you to protect her, or was that one of your many excuses? Su Jinyao was the most beautiful woman in the eternal ascension world. Wang Wei did not believe for a second that one of the parasites did desire her beauty for herself. But from what he knew from Ao Channy's memory, she was perfectly fine and still had no partners. As such, he knew she must have her ways of protecting herself. You ignorant fool. You have no idea the power they have. You cannot fathom the difference in power between Tier 12 and 11. Paragons reign supreme, they are almighty. Wang Wei internally sighed as he could sense the other upper-seated players agreed with this sentiment. He could tell these kids were brainwashed to believe such a thing. Meanwhile, with a quick check of the lower-seated players, he could sense they were all sneering, some openly while most were secret. To these people who had to fight their entire life to sit on the throne, they would never let anyone stay in their way to power. And many of them would rather die than bend their heads to give in to any authoritarian figures. They will respect powerhouses but never cower in fear before them. That may be true, replied Wang Wei. But there are many ways to fight a war. Is the enemy too powerful? Okay, I'll hide and cultivate until I reach the same height as them. The solution is not working? Alright, I'll leave to search for allies that could deal with my enemy, even if this meant I could be inviting a wolf into the nest. Anything is better than just giving up and accepting my fate. You don't understand, Xiaotiandi repeated nonstop. Wang Wei looked at him intensely, sensing the agitated mood he emitted. Whatever. I'm done wasting my breath with a weak-willed individual like yourself. Wang Wei shook his head before sighing. The heavens is truly blind to give someone like you such a powerful physique, he said before flying back to his seat. Many people nodded in agreement with him. They could see despite how strong Xiao Tiandi was, he was a person with a terrible state of mind and a weak Tao heart. His current state was barely enough to bear the heaven will, and a tiny change could lead to him becoming a pseudo-emperor. Softly coughed Lord Spirit, trying to look as if he did not just hear things that would be considered blasphemy in the upper dimension. The combat aspect of the trial is officially finished. We will regroup a few days from now for the final competition. This Lord Spirit did not even care about points for the combat aspect of this trial. So, what are the criteria he is using to choose the final inheritor? Thought Wang Wei with squinted eyes. He then gazed at Zhang Yuqing, who was secretly fuming and trying his best to hide his intense killing desire. Without saying anything more, he flew to his mansion before leaving a secret message to someone through divine sense. Come see me. I have something important to give you. Chapter 596 Buddhism vs. Taoism 1. After Wang Wei returned to his mansion, he immediately heard Ancestor Wuqing's voice. So, you must have reasons for taking such a risk? In preparing for the future. Without removing these so-called 2 suns and 7 moons, I can never reach the top of the cultivation world. And even the ancestors cannot properly revive. So, I will need all the help I can to deal with them. Although I know I might not need to remind you, given your personality, I still will. Always be cautious. After you ascend, I and the other will no longer be able to protect you. The sect will probably not be able to provide you any help and might even be a hindrance. So always be slow and steady. I will, replied Wang Wei, and Wang Wuqing no longer spoke. The old ancestor felt his young descendant grew too fast, and it was only a matter of time before his old bones became useless. Although he always knew this was inevitable, recent events indicate this process might be faster than anticipated. Meanwhile, Wang Wei observed Feng Heng's mansion for a few hours, trying to detect any signs of trouble. Luckily, until Monk Wuji showed up, nothing changed. Monk Wuji deactivated his invisible talisman before cupping and bowing his hands. Benefactor, what do you need from me? Monk, can you tell me exactly Zhang Yuqing's strength? The last time you were vague. Monk Wuji frowned for a moment before answering. He is only the peak of 7 leaf. However, he can use a secret technique to generate a mysterious power from his 2 physiques, boosting his power to 8 leaf. Is that so? Wang Wei briefly pondered before taking out a booklet and handing it to him. See if this can help you rise in strength. Monk Wuji took the book labeled 7 Chakras and scanned through it. And the more he read, the brighter his eyes were. This technique is similar to the concept of 5 inner wheels. However, it is more detailed, purer, and more powerful. Monk Wuji had access to all the Buddhist scriptures, so he remembered the school of thought based on the 5 inner wheels. Although they were not the most popular or influential in the Buddhist sect, they were generally decent. 5 inner wheel? I remember Buddhism only had 5 chakras back on earth before it was changed, while Hinduism, the creator of this system, had 7 chakras. I'm guessing this world also discovered some version of chakra, though Wang Wei. This technique should allow you to reach 8 leaf, so hurry because I don't think you have much time. You make a great point, benefactor, replied Monk Wuji before rushing out. And to Wang Wei's dismay, the monk entered one of the rooms inside his mansion instead of returning home. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net. If you want to read more chapters, please visit Novel Next. To experience faster update speed, Monk Wuji took out a formation plate from his space ring, allowing him to lay out a powerful array around the room instantly. Subsequently, he entered the time treasure he had to facilitate faster cultivation. As soon as he entered the treasure, he did not waste time opening his chakra. Unlike Wang Wei, who had to use the good fortune flame to open the chakra, Monk Wuji used the purest of Buddha power. And since the energy he used perfectly matched the concept of chakra, he benefited even more than Wang Wei did. After a few hundred years inside the time treasure, Monk Wuji opened his eyes. His pupil had entirely turned golden, and he radiated an aura of purity, benevolence, and nobility. His body shone with golden lights for a few minutes before he returned to normal. Peak 8 leaf strength. The increase was even greater than I anticipated, Monk Wuji muttered before looking at the artificial sky inside the treasure. Zhang Yuqing, you wait for me. The monk left his treasure before exiting the room and meeting Wang Wei again. It seems you succeeded. Thank you for everything, benefactor. No need. I'm just paying my karma. Be that as it may, you have helped me greatly and made a great contribution to Buddhism. Monk Wuji was not lying. The The 7-chakra method will advance the 5 inner wheels faction by miles, possibly elevating them to one of the great factions of Buddhism. Wang Wei calmly accepted the latter's thanks. Although he did not invent the chakra method, he translated it to fit the laws of the eternal ascension world, which should give him some credit. Furthermore, he did not mind taking credit for someone else's work if it could help him pay some of his karma. Thus, he chatted briefly with the monk before overseeing him leave his mansion. Wang Wei was alone since Li Jun entered seclusion to use the talisman the battle maniac emperor left for him. And since he had to observe the situation in case of any changes, he decided to cultivate a little. He first checked his acupoints. He had already created or opened all his artificial acupoints. The next step in refining his body was to condense the 1964th black holes. Regrettably, he could not do that now as he could sense a fleshly body tribulation was approaching. From the 3rd stage of the true power realm, body refiners have to undergo tribulations often, and it was Wang Wei's turn. And from what he learned from his ancestor, there will be a drastic increase in pain after he reaches the 4th stage. According to the ancient desolate paragon, the pain is so intense that most cultivators give up trying to open the gate of power. Additionally, since he decided to walk both the chi refiner and body tempering path, the pain he will suffer will be at least 100 times more than pure body refiners who focus on only opening the gate. The pain is the way Grand Tao used to balance how powerful body refiners were. Of course, Wang Wei did not mind the pain since his pain talent had already made him a masochist. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net it's begun? Thought Wang Wei as he opened his eyes. At that exact time, all the participants received a notice from Lord Spirit to stay inside their mansion and not interfere with the affairs of the upper dimension. Ancestor, how are the preparations? Everything went as you wished. We hired many immortal tier loose cultivators, and they should have no problem dealing with Zhang Yuqing's people. Wang Wei nodded his head. Although he promised Monk Wuxia he would have his sect help him, he also did not want to directly use the powerhouses of the sect. He wanted plausible deniability, and by hiring other people to fight instead of his sect, he had a reasonable cause to do so. Of course, Wang Wei knew deniability might be pointless based on Zhang Yuqing's character. He could imagine that Supreme Unity was not the kind of person that cared for loopholes. Nevertheless, he wanted to be careful, just in case. His motto has always been to be highly cautious when dealing with these old monsters. Outside Feng Heng's mansion, 2 people floated in the sky, staring intensely at one another. Bald monk, you should know you are not my opponent. Stop this futile resistance. I am not the same me as I was yesterday. Zhang Yuqing shook his head. Why do you monks try so desperately to resist your fate? My master is now the heavens. Taoism's destiny is to reign supreme, so why not bow and accept the mandate of heaven? All things that rise must fall, replied Monk Wuxia, his voice soft, soothing and full of wisdom. Taoism had its era, Buddhism followed, and it should have been someone else's turn. This was the way to maintain the balance of heaven and earth. But your greed forced another era of Taoism. You have corrupted the way of heaven and earth and thus must pay the price. Blasphemy. Is it? You Taoist priests always preach about being inactive, following the flow of nature, and letting things proceed on their course. Yet you do not practice what you preach. Don't be so sanctimonious, it's disgusting. It's not like you Buddhists are innocent. The entire lower dimension suffered such catastrophe because of the backlash for forcibly prolonging your reign. Their blood is your hands. That is the truth. But we have learned from our mistakes. We strove to do better. Current Buddhism can say without hesitation we have paid our karma. We have made peace with our past. Can you do the same? Enough with your sharp tongue, groaned Zhang Yuqing, his eyes red, gleaming with a demonic atmosphere. He raised his hand to manifest a purple sword. His black, silky long hair turned half white, and a red tattoo of a small sword appeared on his forehead. It's a shame we had to resort with using force. Monk Wuxia's body then changed. He turned into a 7 meters tall golden Buddha. This form had no shirt on, displaying his slightly large belly. He only had shorts to cover his lower body and a golden scarf that floated around his neck. Brilliant golden light shone on him, along with chants of scriptures. The novel will be updated first on this website. Come back and continue reading tomorrow, everyone. Chapter 597 Buddhism vs. Taoism. 2. Zhang Yuqing frowned as he immediately noticed something. He had fought many times before Monk Wuxia again, and their last confrontation was only a couple of decades ago. Back then, his altruistic golden Buddha body was only 5 meters. He knew the altruistic golden Buddha body was a great body refining technique with 12 layers. With each layer, a monk would grow 1 meter. Despite how powerful the technique was, only a few people could cultivate it because it required a deep understanding of Buddhism, a lot of incense, and merit. Wuxia was the most talented younger generation of Buddhism, and he only cultivated it to the 5th level after millions of years. But now, after just a few decades, he went 2 levels. This could only mean 2 things: there was a catastrophe and he saved billions of lives. Or, he was enlightened and created something that would greatly benefit Buddhism. Jianghu knew it was most likely the second option since he would know if monk Wuxia saved so many people. Regardless, he knew this battle would not be as simple as he thought. Due to a lack of knowledge or information, Jianghu knew that something out of his expectations might occur with each passing minute. Furthermore, his master warned him of the possibility of the Tao opening sect's heir in the lower dimension intervening in his battle. After analyzing the situation, he decided to end this battle as quickly as possible. Wuxia has no limits. Infinite swords, a black and white diagram covered the entire sky. And from that diagram, swords began to fall with no indication of stopping. Each sword had the power to eradicate thousands of tiny universes, and there was an infinite amount of them. Monk Wuxia immediately knew his opponent was going for the kill after seeing this attack. Out of the 5 elements and 3 realms, Buddha is a supreme being that has transcended the 5 elements of all matters. It is also detached from the mundane realms, the realm of the dead and the realm of the spirit. After using this technique, all the swords passed through Monk Wuxia's body as if he was non-existent. With this technique, he entered a state of intangibility similar to Wang Wei's nothingness Tao. Monk Wuxia could see the shock on his opponent's face and he knew the reason. In their last confrontation he could not achieve this level of intangibility. Wuxia involved the concept of everything being born from nothing, so his technique should be useless to a high-level spell like the one Jianghu used. However, the current him was not him of yesterday. Without giving the latter a chance to brief, Monk Wuxia went on the offensive. Buddha's Light, Call of Samsara. Monk Wuxia first took a prayer stance with his palms touching before putting one hand forward. A bright and pure golden light emanated from his hand, illuminating the dark night. The light was so bright that for a moment, it appeared as if the sun had resurfaced, signaling the end of the darkness known as the night. The golden light did not affect the diagram above them, nor did it affect the falling swords. The light directly attacked Jianghu. Do it. You know you want to. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net. If you want to read more chapters, please visit Novel Next. Com to experience faster update speed. That's right. Life is hard, so why struggle? End this misery and relieve your burden by entering samsara. That's right. This is the best place. You can forget your problems, pain and suffering. You can be free. Jianghu groaned as he felt a massive headache. He could not concentrate with millions of whispers tempting him to give up on his life and enter samsara. He could feel his will to live rapidly diminish, and each voice's reasons to do so became more convincing. Jianghu could feel his spirit falling into an eternal abyss full of despair and negative emotions. No, he screamed, waking up from the terror. The voices continued, but he took advantage of this brief clarity to act. He manifested a 2-fold shield inside his sea of consciousness to defend his soul. The first shield contained yin-yang power with a heavy focus on the yin side since it was related to the soul. Wuxia came before yin and yang and can evolve into yin-yang. So, his Wuxia Tao body was a yin-yang body with even more abilities. For the second layer of the shield, Jianghu condensed all the defensive and soul-related sword wills he knew. With these 2 levels of protection he reduced the voices to the point where he could ignore them. But Monk Wuxia would not let things proceed smoothly. Soul-sundering bell. A bronze bell appeared above Monk Wuxia, ringing so loud that it echoed in the soul. Jianghu's noise bled as the vibration from the soul directly injured his soul. However, the Taoist priest gritted his teeth before also going on the offensive. He swung his sword using a superb technique. Wuxia sword, the unmanifest sword, golden blood spewed from Monk Wuxia's body as a diagonal scar appeared on his chest. He could not sense, see or detect the slash in any shape or form. In Taoism, Wuxia symbolizes the unmanifest, the unknown, the undetectable, and the non-existent. Meanwhile, Taji, the successor of Wuxia, symbolizes the manifest or the physical. Monk Wuxia has often suffered against that sword since he could not detect it with his eyes, his reaction, his danger sense, his divine sense, or even secret techniques. At least before that was the case. Buddha's benevolence. Buddha once cut off a piece of his body to feed a starving animal. His benevolence grants him power. Monk Wuxia's aura suddenly increased, and when a second slash appeared on his body forming the X shape, his aura further strengthened. With his technique he can boost his power with every injury. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net. Then the monk's golden body rushed toward Jianghu to fight him head-on. Wuxia wanted to limit his opponent's use of the sword while he took the time to execute the ability he developed after opening his crown chakra. Inside the mansion, Wang Wei witnessed the battle through a formation. I should not underestimate these heaven-chosens from the upper dimension. Their use of Dui realm is phenomenal. He could sense that every attack Monk Wuxia and Jianghu used was boosted by their Dui realm. It magnified their chi/energy, spiritual strength, physical force, and even laws. The subtle and ingenious way they use this power is something Wang Wei just recently learned from the battle maniac Paragon. One of the main reasons that eternal emperors are so powerful is their Dao Will's boost. It is not just a method to eliminate other emperors' imprints, but a method that augmented their overall power. The Dao Will is why it is hard for insurgents to reach the pseudo and eternal emperor level of power. And the reasons that it is statistically impossible to become an insurgent on par with everlasting Empyreans. Monk Wuxia is not bad. I thought his main law was nirvana, but it appeared his main Dao is soul. As for Jianghu's Wuji, Wang Wei observed carefully, fully immersed in the Taoist priest's use of Wuji law. Wuji meaning without limits, without boundaries, boundless. A state of non-distinction, nothingness before the Tao, or the manifestation of everything came into being. The laws of Wuji contain properties of nothingness. Its very definition of beings without limits, distinction, or boundaries can also apply to nothingness. Wang Wei opened his eyes, full of wisdom and containing the universe's fundamental truth. After this enlightenment, his body had subtle and unnoticeable changes. He raised his hand to manifest a mysterious power. He removed an immortal ore from his space ring to test that new power. The ore vanished as if it had changed from a state of existence to non-existence in a matter of nanoseconds. Is this the power of the void? For many years, he pondered how to enter the next stage of his Tabo Dao of nothingness. After many failures, he decided to wait until he proved the Dao to try again. But now, after comprehension of the correlation between Wuji and nothingness, he accessed the power of void beforehand. Of course, Wang Wei knew the transformation was not complete. He was still in the intangibility stage but now contained some powers of the void stage. Wang Wei took a moment to calculate something. I can reach the void stage in the Great Emperor realm, the emptiness stage, after becoming a paragon. But what about the true nothingness stage? His eyes lit up after figuring out some things. Although he knew his prediction might not be correct since he had yet to reach these realms and only knew some vague knowledge about them. Yet he believed he had a high chance of being correct, so he looked forward to the future. Maybe there is a connection between perfection and nothingness, he muttered after suddenly having an idea. Is nothingness one of the few things that are considered perfect? Wang Wei shook his head as he felt he might be reaching. Then he concentrated on the battle. The novel will be updated first on this website. Come back and continue reading tomorrow, everyone. Chapter 598. Buddhism versus Taoism. 3. I wonder whether the Dui realm will evolve into Dao will after I reach the 10th extremity? Or at least, a pseudo-version of it, thought Wang Wei as he looked at Monk Wuxia and Zhang Yuqing's clash of the Dui realm. They were on the 9th stage, which is normal for most people who attempt to complete the 9 extremity foundation. For example, he was currently in the 8th stage since he was in the Saint realm. From the body-tempering realm to the primordial spirit, he ensured that each of the realms was unique, allowing him to reach the 6th stage. As for the void-shattering realm, he entered the 7th stage after his first incarnation entered the same realm. This is because he now had 2 law altar/law trees, and his incarnations were connected through his existence. However, back then he could only use the D7th stage after fusing or borrowing the power of his incarnations. Wang Wei's main body truly entered the 7th stage after his law tree turned silver. The uniqueness of his saint realm was the fact that he had 9 domains and that his domain exceeded the limit of 1.269 trillion kilometers. This was after hearing his ancestors preach. Regarding the future of the Dui realm after achieving the 10 extremities foundation, Wang Wei did not know what would happen. He had no information regarding this level of foundation as no one probably ever reached this level, at least not in the eternal ascension world. Once he succeeded, he was still undetermined about what would happen. There was a chance that nothing occurred since the 10th extremity was nothing but a foundation and since nothing in the realms became unique. But there is also the possibility of an unknown transformation after a mortal truly breaks the boundary between mortal and immortal, acquiring the power of a great emperor. I guess we will wait and see. For a moment, he ignored Monk Wuxi's desperate attacks as his gaze pierced through the void, and he saw an even more destructive battle. More than 10 Dao ancestors and an immortal venerable faced each other. The mercenaries are holding up better than expected, thought Wang Wei after noticing that the people the sect hired could keep up with the people working with Zhang Yuqing. Wang Wei had prepared for the unexpected and gave these people some talismans to help them in an emergency. He tasked them with keeping the enemy at bay for as long as needed. However, these mercenaries' display of power was better than he anticipated, given they were loose cultivators. After checking the situation, he focused on the current battle. Monk Wuxi had a few more scars on his body, but they were minor compared to the first two. He closed his eyes as he used palm attacks, directly clashing against Zhang Yuqing's chaos-grade magic artifact sword. Monk Wuxi opened his eyes, which were profound as if he was a man who saw through the veil of existence. Higher consciousness. Monk Wuxi's eyes became clearer as he could now see the world differently. He was not limited by sight, sense, soul, spirit, or mind. He elevated his internal and external senses to a higher essence, allowing him to see things he could previously not see, for example the unknown, the unmanifest, or the non-existent. He raised his palm in one direction, generating a powerful shockwave that made the void tremble. Although it appeared Monk Wuxi attacked empty air, he and Zhang Yuqing knew he targeted the Wuji sword. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net. If you want to read more chapters, please visit Novel Next. To experience faster update speed. Impossible, said Zhang Yuqing, unable to comprehend what had occurred. In their previous battle, the monk was forced to tank all his attacks once he used the Wuji sword. But now he could detect and possibly evade his attack. Monk Wuji was not in the habit of giving his opponent the time to think or brief. Although he was benevolent at heart, Buddha also had a wrathful side. Essence Spirit Attack, bang! Monk Wuxi's palm landed on Zhang Yuqing's chest, caving it inward. The Taoist priest flew a dozen meters away coughing blood. Adding to that, he had a massive headache. The palm affected his body, essence, and the injury was transferred to his soul, spirit. Luckily, he used a body refining technique that used the constant revolution of yin and yang to temper the flesh. Nevertheless, his soul was more fragile than his body, making injuries even harder to deal with. Zhang Yuqing used his Di realm to try his best to remove his opponent's effect so he could heal. Unfortunately, they were in the same stage and had similar levels of control and application. As such, the process would take time, something he did not have. Swish, swish, swish. He swung his sword non-stop, but Monk Wuji easily dodged. Damn it, thought Zhang Yuqing in frustration. The Wuji sword was one of his most potent attacks as it gathered the best from his two physiques. And now that it was not working, he became frustrated, especially since there were many tactics he could not use because of the restraint in the lower dimension. Regardless, he decided not to easily give up as he had one last trump card. Secret technique. Physique burning. Zhang Yuqing did not hesitate to sacrifice his two physiques for a drastic increase in power. Usually, this would result in severe destruction of the foundation and potentially losing one or both physiques. However, he did not care since he had a master that could instantly heal such a minor injury. With this secret technique, Zhang Yuqing's strength increased from the peak of 7 leaf to the middle of 9 leaf. Wuji to Taiji, stillness to motion. Wuji represented the state of the universe before its birth, a state of stillness that embodied the concept of non-existent. Then, from nothingness was born something. Tao gave birth to 1, 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to myriad things in existence. These words perfectly encapsulated the process of Wuji transforming into Taiji, a process in which nothingness, stillness, created something, motion. This chapter upload first at Novel Bin. Net. After using this technique, Zhang Yuqing's surroundings moved in slow motion, as if time was slowed down, whether it was the air, the spiritual qi, the clouds, or Monk Wuji. However, the technique did not use the power of time per se. It used the very concept of motion and stillness to accomplish a similar feat, and maybe one even more impressive. Zhang Yuqing looked at Wuji, slowly moving some of his fingers and mouth. His red eyes gleamed with sneering as he marveled at his godlike power. He flew before the monk, looking directly into his eyes. He smirked before moving his sword, heading directly for the heart, a vital organ. Unfortunately, before he succeeded, a powerful sonic wave came from Monk Wuxia's mouth, pushing him away. Then, the sound echoed with so much vigor that it shook and disturbed the power of stillness, affecting him and the surrounding. That was closed. If I did not open my throat chakra and developed a new ability, I might not have made it, thought Monk Wuxia with relief. Although he was not afraid of death as he would just reincarnate, it did not mean he wanted to die. Reincarnations met more Buddhist monks since their philosophies revolved around achieving enlightenment through trial and error in each life. Each monk must fully use any life, even if they reincarnated into an animal or plant. How can you become so powerful? You don't need to know. Zhang Yuqing gritted his teeth, thinking about an explanation for the current situation. He did not believe the latter was using some powerful artifact since they were not back home. He did not sense any secret techniques. As for other people helping Wuxia, he never considered this aspect. When it came to Wang Wei, Zhang Yusheng was impressed that the latter could reach 6-leaf strength in the lower dimension as it indicated his talent. However, without knowledge of the 9-extremity foundation, he believed the latter would remain at that level until the heaven will battle. He never fathomed the latter could help his enemy reach such a level. In Zhang Yuqing's preparation, he only had to be on the lookout for possible sneak attacks or disturbances from Wang Wei. After all, the strength difference between 6 and 7 leaves was vast, meaning the latter could only be an aid to Monk Wuxia and a nuisance to him. He never imagined, in his wildest dream, he would lose without any help or interference. "Let's end this rivalry," Monk Wuxia said with a sigh. Then an enormous golden Buddha image appeared behind him. The Buddha's face seemed painful, full of regret and sorrow. Palm of sorrow. The Buddha's enormous palm descended on Zhang Yuqing. And in the process, countless red glow flew from different corners of the void, turning into a red aura around the palm. From the aura, Zhang Yuqing could sense an intense amount of regret, pain, sorrow, and hatred directed at him. He analyzed this technique and gathered the negative emotions of all the Buddhist monks killed by the absolute beginning emperor. "I cannot survive this attack," thought Zhang Yuqing as he watched the descended palms, unable to move an inch. "Masters, save me." The novel will be updated first on this website. Come back and continue reading tomorrow, everyone. The Two Sons. Without hesitation, confusion, sadness, or even any emotions for that matter, Monk Wuxia dropped that palm. He did not know the final outcome, whether Zhang Yuqing would be saved, as it was common in their early confrontations once he had the advantage. Boom. With slight surprise, Monk Wuxia watched as Zhang Yuqing's body exploded into billions of pieces, his soul and Tao disappearing. He looked at the falling blood with a daze, waiting for something to occur. But nothing did. For a moment he wondered if he was wrong. Maybe he could not sense anything. After all, the difference between himself and Zhang Yuqing's master was so vast that it was normal if he could not detect or even understand if he took action. However, Monk Wuxia quickly denied this possibility. The other times Zhang Yuqing was saved, he sensed something. He knew it was because supreme unity was not being discreet. Nevertheless, he was aware. "So, it's really over," he muttered, feeling somewhat lost. Although he despised Zhang Yuqing's hypocrisy and ideologies, the latter was also his rival for the past couple of million years. Wuxia did not know how to feel about losing him in such a sad manner. He sighed to himself before looking down, checking on Feng Heng's manner. Then he flew to his mansion without saying another word. He wanted to heal his injuries. All the participants watched this battle in shock. However, only Wang Wei and the upper-seated players knew the true struggle behind these two people. And when they saw Zhang Yuqing was not saved, they were momentarily shocked before concluding that this outcome made sense. And that realization brought even more terror to them. But then they remembered Wang Wei's speech and felt ashamed of their thought. They gritted their teeth, thinking deeply about the future. Eternal Ascension World. 2 suns and 9 moons lorded over all myriad beings in this infinitely large world, and they symbolized absolute power. These stellar bodies should have been only symbols, but one of the suns housed a magnificent palace made entirely out of supreme chaos treasures, primordial and paragon materials. Sitting cross-legged on valuable meditation cushions at the center of the room was an older man with long white hair and a well-trimmed beard. He had a purple robe laced with golden threads, black shoes, and a beautiful jade token hanging on his waist. The interesting thing about this cultivator was all his clothes shone brilliantly with the light of treasures, indicating that each piece was valuable enough for countless paragons to fight over. Supreme Unity opened his eyes, and there was no vast or mighty aura. He resembled an ordinary person. However, his eyes were off-putting to anyone who saw him because they lacked any emotions. It was like he was a piece of machine with only logic. Zhang Yuqing is dead? It doesn't matter. He has already served his purpose. Supreme Unity only accepted him as a disciple because he had two physiques. He wanted to create a special method to divide his existence into two separate but connected parts. The main part would be his previous self, and the second part would remain fused with Heavenly Tao. Upon success, he would no longer be limited or influenced by Heavenly Tao. Supreme Unity wanted to gather information and draw inspiration from individuals with two heavenly physiques. After getting the information he wanted, Zhang Yuqing was useless as a pawn. Heavenly Tao is drawing a lot of strength from all the paragons that have existed since the Eternal Ascension world's creation to reduce my control. If only Maitreya did not stop me, none of this would have happened. Of course, Supreme Unity knew the primary source of his trouble was the method he used to take a half step into transcendence was fundamentally flawed. However, there was nothing he could now but take complete control of Heavenly Tao and swallow it. Once he succeeds, he will be free, have no restrictions, and can further pursue detachment. The situation is not looking good for me once Maitreya can receive faith from the lower dimension. She might be free before me. Supreme Unity frowned before closing his eyes to focus on regaining his lost power. Separating his existence was more complex than he imagined, and he also needed to stabilize things first, or his strength would be drastically reduced. As such, his best plan is to succeed before Maitreya or hope the other rulers can eradicate the people in limbo. There was a small town at the center of the Eternal Ascension world, full of mortals. These people lived happy and fulfilled lives, always with a joyous smiles on their faces. Despite knowing the existence of cultivators, no one in this village pursued power or immortality. The villagers were content. Not far from the village was a rundown temple with only one monk. It was a young woman dressed in plain female monk attire. She tied her hair in a bun, making her extraordinary beauty appear dull and unordinary. The monk was known for her benevolence, and the villagers enjoyed offering prayers to her temple or communicating with her. They always offered her to save money and build a bigger and better temple, but she refused, stating she was comfortable with how it was. Little did these villagers know that this woman, living in such dirt-poor and dilapidated temple, was the supreme leader of Buddhism, one of the two sons, Maitreya Buddha. After sensing Zhang Yuqing, Maitreya opened her eyes from meditation, and the power of infinite time flashed deep in them. Her gaze penetrated space and dimensions to look at her disciple in the lower dimension. So, he finally discarded the useless pawn, she commented before shaking her head in disappointment. You're really gone, Supreme Unity. The Supreme Unity she knew was an ambitious and power-hungry cultivator, but he still had some bottom line. But even that was gone, and Maitreya does not know whether this resulted from fusing with Heavenly Tao or his true personality manifesting after acquiring power. After sighing to herself, Maitreya's gazed to a handsome young man with gray hair and eyes. Should I help him? All my calculations indicate he is the one I'm waiting for. But the future is not set in stone. Maybe I need to help him get through this upcoming catastrophe to become the person I need. She frowned as her eyes perused the infinite possibilities of the future. However, she could not find the answer she wanted. Let's wait and see. Then she shifted her gaze to the Tao opening sect, her eyes ignoring all the emperor formation to gaze at Wu Hong, who was in retreat. Perfect foundation? If I had such a thing, it would make taking half steps so much easier. She shook her head before looking at someone else. This time, it was someone in the Eternal Ascension world. It was a woman that looked exactly like Wu Hong, except for a more supreme, strict, and noble aura. Wu Hong definitely did not create that clone. So, a future version of herself? But how come I cannot completely see through it? Is that a sign she found the path ahead and surpassed me? If that were the case, Maitreya would be happy, as this would mean she had hope for her path forward. However, things appeared too complicated for the moment. Your fated lover finally appeared, but with a clone. Yee, what an interesting love story. I cannot wait to see how it unfolds. Maitreya remembered conversations with Wu Hong about that unique love fate line. Wu Hong tried to remove it, but the connection was too powerful, and it was one of her fate nexus, so the river of fate would not allow her to get rid of it so easily. Of course, as a powerful paragon, there were many ways to deal with fate nexus besides becoming a fateless. They could postpone the event indefinitely or control how it occurs. For example, Wu Hong could create a clone to meet her destined partner and have them fall in love before dispersing it. With this method, her fate of falling in love was accomplished, thus removing the fate nexus. and these two methods were just the most used. In the end, Mithrea convinced her to wait and see, since maybe the person destined to be with her was worth it. Love fate lines were rare amongst immortal tier cultivators, and it is usually a sign that two people, among the entire chaos universe, were perfectly compatible. Do you want me to remove the blockade and allow you to enter primordial chaos? It might help you heal much faster. No, replied Wu Hong. Are you still mad at me? How dare I, respected son? I told you I had my reasons. Which are? I cannot say for now. And when you can say, we can talk properly. Mithrea sighed. She had her reasons for not only allowing these paragons to usurp power but also preventing the rise of others. Her detachment method was also flawed, and she required the eternal ascension world to remain stable and unchanged to avoid affecting her. Once someone broke through the paragon realm, the changes in the world would be detrimental to her. So, she needed time to stabilize herself. Regardless, her bottom line was not to touch the people in limbo. Now, things have gotten better, she does not have this much worry, but she also has to keep looking out for supreme unity. Mithrea smiled wryly before continuing her cultivation. Meanwhile, Wu Hong looked in her direction before also closing her eyes. She was not unreasonable and understood her friend had a reason for doing what she did. However, she also wanted an explanation before they could resume their relationship. I have 3 gift bonus chapters waiting to write. But you guys have to give me a few days before I begin releasing them. The 7 Moons. So, that's what happened? Said Su Junyao, her beautiful voice coming from the other side of the formation. She was not surprised by Zhang Yuqing's fate, as many people predicted this possible outcome. Master, I'm sorry. You don't have to blame yourself. Return home immediately and I'll deal with the rulers. What about the inheritance? Forget about it for now. Maybe I can take it from the final winner. If you give me a second chance, I'm willing to try harder. You don't have much time. The isolation of the lower dimension is almost done. What does that mean? It means the rulers will be cut off from interfering. To be precise, no one can interfere. Well, maybe not everyone. Su Junyao was not sure where the 2 sons could intervene. On top of everything else, some changes have begun here. It is unclear whether it is positive or negative, but we must deal with it. I see, muttered Xiao Tiandi. Su Junyao ended the communication while pondering that this event might be a suitable catalyst for change. She did not want her disciple to remain in such a depressed state. Hopefully, this Wang Wei's words have positively influenced him. Meanwhile, Xiao Tiandi hesitated for a moment before taking out a token. He looked in the direction of Wang Wei's mansion, his eyes full of confusion. With a sigh, he activated it and disappeared from the lower dimension. And 2 people did the same as him. Eternal Ascension World. Ao Jing observed his son Ao Tiani. He could see how much of terrible shape he was. I thought that brat said he would not go too far, he thought before shaking his head. He raised his hand to instantly create a world as large as the entire lower dimension, as large as the 3,000 world communities that contain trillions of worlds between lower to heavenward worlds. Ao Jing created the individuals, the history, culture, different races and power levels. He made everything needed for a complete world to function. He then glanced at his son before snapping his finger, forcing him to reincarnate in that world. I have created infinite scenarios for you to temper your mind. Hopefully you can stand after breaking. Ao Jing designed this world to start over once Ao Jing reached a certain level, allowing him to experience different aspects of life. Regrettably, Heavenly Tao does not allow the 9-extremity foundation that is cultivated in such a manner. Otherwise, this level of foundation would be more common. After settling his son, Ao Jing went to report to the Patriarch. In another section of the upper dimension, Shi Rulin appeared in an enormous and opulent palace decorated with gold, purple and priceless jewels. And the moment she appeared, a man dressed in court eunuch uniforms teleported before her, kneeling on one knee. Your Highness. This is the information my father wants, she said calmly, her previous cheerful and approachable demeanor replaced by a cold and authoritarian presence. The inheritance? The mission failed, replied Shi Rulin before walking away, ignoring the eunuch. She walked to a room with a golden throne and sat on it, a deep pondering look on her face. A secret that few people knows is she is the secret child of one of the rulers, the Earth Emperor. Her relationship with her father was great, despite not being publicly acknowledged, as he always supported and cared for her, and she idolized him. However, Shi Rulin has always felt that some things were wrong but was always scared to address them. For example, Why did she never attempt the Nine-Extremity Foundation? She once asked her father for permission and he refused, explaining that it was dangerous and had a high failure rate. Danger was never a good excuse for cultivators not to do something. As for the failure, she could still benefit even if she failed. Another odd behavior was when she began cultivating an outlaw Dao. Her father warned her of the danger, to the point of scaring her to change her Dao. A third anomaly was the oldest of her siblings, the great Chu divine court princes. She knew a few of them were Empyreans but not one became paragons. And the current crown prince has been in this realm for far too long. Then there is brother Lu. He was the only one who became an everlasting Empyrean, but he suddenly died. If it were before, sure Rulin would never care about these anomalies. But after witnessing Xiao Tian's inner turmoil and Wang Wei's rebuttal, she had no choice but to confront these burning thoughts she had forced in the back of her mind. Unfortunately, she did not like the conclusions she made. What do I do? Great Chu divine court, in a palace thousands of times even more magnificent than Sher Rulin, on a throne room. A young man with long black hair and a long goatee sat on a throne, wearing a yellow emperor outfit with dragon designs. The Earth Emperor calmly read the information his daughter sent. Without much change in his expression, he put away the talisman, entering a pondering state. With the upcoming era, the karma position of Heavenly Emperor might finally appear. I can finally put my plan into motion. Earth Emperor originally planned for one of his 33,000 children to inherit that position. He had even more confidence in Sher Rulin, but after the recent changes he theorized the position would appear in the lower dimension. Suddenly he sensed something. Is there a meeting? The Earth Emperor thought before closing his eyes, sending his mind into a dimension with 8 seats. Many people believe that 7 Mons reign over the world, but only they know there is an 8th and hidden moon. Did everyone get the information? Asked Seven Cauldron Taoist, a middle-aged woman dressed in a Taoist robe with pill symbols. I haven't received it, replied Five Feather Phoenix, the matriarch of the Phoenix race. So, someone else distributed the information from Xiao Tiendi and Sher Rulin. All 7 reviewed the information with a calm attitude. Undead Phoenix, what about your side? Everyone looked at a young man with a pale complexion, dead eyes, and a black phoenix mark on his forehead. I've got more information. I've reduced the leader of the new era to 3 people. Undead Phoenix waved his hand to manifest 3 people. Chu Luo, Di Tian and Wang Wei. They have successfully established a 9-extremity foundation, said Undead Phoenix before explaining all the information he gathered. If Wang Wei were here, he would be shocked as many things he thought he hid well were revealed in this meeting. He severely underestimated the capability of a paragon. Chu Luo can be eliminated since he is not from the Myriad Emperor world. Di Tian is the second to be eliminated since his main goal seemed to revive his loved one. The most likely creator of the new era is this Wang Wei. He is intelligent and cunning. And similar to Qiyuan, he is an innovator and a visionary, a person who advocates for the advancement of civilization. Yes, he seems like the perfect person to lead the new era of the Myriad Emperor world, commented Seven Cauldron as she looked at the changes in the Dao opening sex domains. She saw an entire civilization based on puppets and mortals as the core. So, do we get rid of him? Asked Blood Dragon. It's not that simple. He is connected to Lord Methreya and Empress Wu, added Undead Phoenix. The Empress? She hasn't shown up in so long, staying to herself. Why is she making moves now? I don't know. Everyone frowned. Seven Cauldrons looked at a monk who had not said anything since the meeting. Monk Twinflower, what does your leader say? Twinflower was the Maithuna sect's leader, a Buddhism branch that focused on dual cultivation. Buddhism ideology focused on the body remaining pure, but the Maithuna faction followed the opposite philosophies, believing the pleasure of the flesh is another pathway to enlightenment. Of course, their factions do not engage in mindless overindulgence. Each monk will choose one partner to cultivate for their entire life. The monk did not respond as he knew the situation was complicated. His leader no longer wanted to act the same way and prevent others from becoming paragons. However, she was also restrained by supreme unity the same way she restrained him. Meanwhile, all the others here have kept their stand the same. You can do what you want, he responded since the Lord told him he did not have to worry about Wang Wei. In that case, let's remove all 3 of them, said Seven Cauldron. You should be careful, said Time Eater. Di Tian is the Emperor creator. A few of the people he created are part of the Limbo group. We should be careful in case they decide to interfere. That's a good idea. Disaster, you have not said a word since the meeting? asked Five Feather Phoenix, looking at an older man dressed in plain black. Your actions are pointless. Catastrophe is approaching us, and nothing you can do will stop what's coming. Everyone frowned. They knew Disaster Paragon was the kind of person who valued his life above everything else. He did not participate in the ultimate taboo because he foresaw his doom. He joined their group because it was the way to save his life. And now that he said these words, he must have detected something and even already planned how to survive. And given he was the hidden moon and was unknown to the world, it might be easier to do. Don't mind him. Although these people have great destinies, it does not change the fact they are weak. So, as long as we act fast and swift, they cannot escape their fate, said Time Eater. True, so the best plan is to send a projection and annihilate all of them before they can react, said Seven Cauldron. To be safe, let's all send a projection, said Earth Emperor. Agree. Since everyone agrees, let's discuss how to deal with Gu Xian and the traitors, especially the Celestial Clan, continued Seven Cauldron. Gu Xian is a rat. With his Dao and the lawless zone, searching for him is simply not feasible and not worth the effort, commented Undead Phoenix. He is not that important anyways, added Five Feather Phoenix. And the same can be said about the Celestial Clan. With the recent changes, the Source Chi space has become even more dangerous, even for us. So, is it worth it to chase after them? It is, said Time Eater. You know their background. If we don't nip them in the bud, it's only a matter of time before they give birth to a Paragon or Tier 12 insurgent. But how do we search for them? We send people to look. And each of us will alternate personally looking for them, said Time Eaters. That could work. They'll take the first shift, said Seven Cauldron. Then the group conversed a little more, discussing how they would execute all their plans. Bang. Suddenly they all sensed something and frowned. They closed their eyes, and their mind immediately left the eternal ascension world, traveling the infinite distance that is primordial chaos. A few minutes later, all seven opened their eyes with a serious look unlike anything they had ever been, all because of the news they had received. The All-Seeing Temple, a place in primordial chaos known for predicting events that would affect the entire chaos universe. They even predicted the appearance of the ultimate taboo. The Paragons just received news the temple had just received a divination that would once again affect the entire universe. Although the prophecy would take some time to process fully, everyone knew a storm was coming. The Paragons then looked at Disaster, wondering whether the changes in their world were the prelude to something even more significant. The changes may also begin in the Eternal Ascension world. The Paragons suddenly thought of something, and they instinctively wanted to eliminate the three anomalies immediately. Boom. The world shook a little and their faces changed. The lower dimension was blocked entirely, preventing them from accessing it. Primordial chaos, prehistoric chaos world. Hongjun opened his eyes from meditation. He looked in the direction of the All-Seeing Temple. So, the news finally got out. New Era's destiny. Sher Rulin's mansion. She walked back and forth, thinking about her decision. After hearing Wang Wei's speech, she was convinced he was the one who would lead the new era. Now she pondered whether to oppose, befriend, or become partners. And the deciding factor will be whether to prove the Tao in the Myriad Emperor world. I currently have a strength of 2 leaf and will soon reach the peak of 3 leaf. By restarting cultivation I might have a chance to reach 4 leaf, the middle level of Immortal Venerable. Meanwhile, his strength is already reaching 6 leaf. Sher Rulin frowned, analyzing all the information she gathered. He is currently only tier 8, meaning he has plenty of opportunity to reach 7 leaf. With secret techniques I could breach the gap for a brief moment. However, there is also the possibility he also had some secret techniques. Sher Rulin remembered the battle against Xiao Tiendi. She also noticed how he outclassed Xiao Tiendi in battle awareness and experience. Furthermore, Wang Wei obviously did not use his full strength since he never used his domain. The chances of me defeating him and proving the Tao are extremely low. The rulers might send other Heaven Chosens to infiltrate the Myriad Opening sect, making the situation more complex. So, the best course of action is to go to another Heavenwell world. The Celestial Clan does not need to be the ruler of the new era. I doubt there can be one absolute era after how people reacted to the 2 suns and 7 moons. The clan only needs to be one of the main people at the top. Sher Rulin's experience in the lower dimension opened her eyes to many things she had never thought of. And now, after making a decision, she felt a heavy weight lifted from her shoulder, and her mind became at peace. Without wasting time, she hopped on an innate treasure to travel to another world community. She knew she needed strength to sit at the same table as Wang Wei and negotiate her value. She also required strength to survive the upcoming storm. Wang Wei's mansion. He did not know about Shi Rulan's decision or secret departure. He still marveled at what had occurred and why supreme unity did not save his disciple. After thinking about it, he came up with many reasons why. Wang Wei then suddenly felt something making him frown. He calculated something before receiving a message he needed to return home. After pondering for a moment, he entered the formation to do so. And as soon as he appeared, an enormous dark purple dragon appeared above the sky, surrounding the entire world. No matter whether it was mortal, demons, or cultivators, no matter what continent it was, everyone saw the mighty dragon. The dragon released a supreme and noble aura before roaring to the heavens, announcing its presence and influence. Then, it gazed directly at Wang Wei before plunging into his body. All the cultivators who saw the dragon instinctively knew what it was as the information popped into their mind, the son of the era. Furthermore, they also knew who was chosen to bear such heavy destiny. Wang Wei calmly received this title and duty. His ancestor warned him this might happen. Although he disliked Heavenly Tao over the years, he also understood that the latter's actions were essentially just executing a program. By cultivating an outlaw Tao, he activated a program or rule of Heavenly Tao to scheme against him. "I still don't like you, but I guess our relationship can be somewhat neutral," he commented but received no reply. Wang Wei did not mind as he closed his eyes to sense the changes happening to him. "I'm officially a protagonist," Wang Wei muttered after opening his eyes. Son of an Era is only a better version of Son of Destiny, granting him immense luck. However, the exciting aspect for Wang Wei was how much luck he already had. His human luck had reached 7 rainbow color, he was an overlord, and now he stacked the Son of an Era title. He was now a protagonist in every sense of the word and even more. Regardless, I should be careful as luck is a double-edged sword. He sent a message back to the sect before returning to the trial. Meanwhile, all the Heaven Chosens were shocked after receiving the news. The prideful ones gritted their teeth, cursing why they were not chosen. The calmer ones began to plan on how to take the title away. Only 2 people had different reactions. Western Continent. Mo Xingyun calmly looked at what had happened. "So, my prediction came true, he was chosen to lead this era. However, I did not expect it did not give anyone else a chance." She squinted her eyes, thinking about her next step of action. She had to plan ahead to survive and strive in the upcoming era. The other person with a similar reaction to Mo Xingyun was Di Tian. He looked at the changes in the sky, not caring in the slightest. He had a hint that this would happen, especially after Wang Wei passed the outlaw trial. However, according to his theory, the new era's destiny should have been divided into smaller sizes, with Wang Wei being granted the most. He did not expect Heavenly Tao to be so bold and give everything to him. This choice meant it was 1,000 times more difficult to take this destiny from Wang Wei. Regardless, he did not care much. With his will, soul, power, and experience, the son of an era's destiny could not affect his mind. This ability did not work when he fought Empress Wu, and it will not work now. Di Tian only cared about achieving 10th extremity and proving the Tao in this generation. Regarding the arrival of the new era, it has to wait for the next generation. Southern Vermilion Bird Continent, Heavenly Flame Domain. This particular domain is famous throughout the entire Myriad Emperor world because it is the place that gave birth to the most heavenly fire. There is a legend that the Flame Emperor spent most of his youth in this place, searching and hunting for heavenly fires to create his famous Chaos Flame. Many alchemists will venture into this place to search for heavenly flames or pay people to search for them. A few supreme sects allied and created a business helping people search for these flames. Emperor lineages did not compete with them because of how dangerous the place was and because it was less cost-efficient to pay them to do the dirty work. Deep in the domains, in a separate small world, there was a pool made of a dark and eerie blue flame. Bathing at the center of that flame was a handsome young man with an 8-pack for abs, a black flame mark in the middle of his brow, and a creepy vibe that was somewhat very attractive. The young man opened his eyes and they were all black with no pupil or iris. He slowly walked out of the pool as a dark red robe appeared on his body. His vision then penetrated the small world as he looked at the dragon. It appeared not long after losing contact with the master. This is not a coincidence. The young man frowned. Things will become difficult without help, but the mission must continue. The young man took a few steps before stopping. He then looked at a brown spot on his arm. "I need a new body and one with a high flame talent. Should I go after that Huo Clan's heir?" Her phoenix bloodline is perfect. As a member of the soul race, changing bodies, no matter the gender, was expected. And he could possess anyone he could overwhelm. However, because of the technique he practiced, he needed special flame attribute bodies. Forget it. The situation has just changed, so it would be best to lay low for a while. Plus, the corpse-selling sect has already promised me a new body. With them having branched in different world communities, it should be easier to find me a new body. The young man left his cultivation retreat place to head to the corpse-selling sect. Meanwhile, many shadows suddenly appeared after Wang Wei became a son of an era, clouding the entire world into this sudden eerie atmosphere. And the situation became even tenser when the Heaven Mystery Pavilion released the divination that some anomalies had occurred in this generation's Heaven will battle. This news forced some sects who did not want to participate in this generation's battle to act. They awakened some of their sleeping Heaven Chosens from past eras since they needed powerful leadership to deal with the upcoming storm. Meanwhile, after returning to the trial, Wang Wei planned to exit his mansion to go somewhere. Then he suddenly stopped as he thought of something. Is it a coincidence that I suddenly became a son of Era? His intuition told him it was not. So he divined any recent changes to the world. He did not hesitate to power his incarnation strength to ensure success. So, the lower dimension has been completely cut off. This sudden decision of Heavenly Tao was a calculated move with a purpose. Wang Wei thought about many possibilities, but he had no concrete proof for any of them. And he could not divine or calculate any other information. So he gave up, labeling this information as important in his mind. Opportunist? Haha, son of an era. Excellent, excellent, excellent news, said Wang Wuqing as he magically appeared out of nowhere as he usually does, grinning from ear to ear. It's all right, replied Wang Wei nonchalantly. Why aren't you happier? Why should I? As a son of an era, unless something peculiar occurs, you are destined to become an eternal emperor. Without, I'm still destined to become one. It's not the same. Yes, it is. Wang Wuqing shook his head. What about the fact you get to lead the new era? Without it, I would still lead the new era. To be honest, Heavenly Tao gave me the position because it knows I'm one of the few people who want to change the world for the better. If Heavenly Tao had to choose two people to lead the era based solely on ideology and the desire for change, only Wang Wei and Huafeng Huang would be qualified as they are the only people with obvious ambitions of changing the world. However, Huafeng Huang is too biased toward the ancient clan, and her method might do more harm than good. The title only made things official, added Wang Wei. You might not be happy, but I and the others are very excited. With this position and the spirit of the epic, we don't have to worry about the 9 Emperor curse. I thought the curse was no longer a problem? It's not, but until the final battle you never know. But with Heavenly Tao giving you all the destiny of the new era, we no longer have to worry about it trying to restrict us. That's fair, agreed Wang Wei. Then he said goodbye to the ancestor before secretly exiting his mansion, heading straight to Feng Heng's mansion. He secretly announced his presence and waited outside. More than half an hour later, the formations opened. A maid led him to a room where Feng Heng waited for him with tea. Wang Wei unceremoniously sat before him, and Feng Heng poured tea for both of them. To what do I owe this visit, Sect Master Wang Wei? Wang Wei took a sip of the tea and it was refreshing. Great tea. It would have been better without the poison. Excuse me? You're excused, replied Wang Wei as he savored the tea. It would not directly harm me but remain undetected in my body, rendering me weak or immobile at the right moment. I guess I should thank your benevolence for not wanting to kill me. Sect Master, these are severe accusations, especially without proof. Forget it. Anyways, this is the kind of tactic I would use. So, there is no point in blaming you. What Feng Heng did is similar to what he did during his beach party. Unfortunately, this tactic has become useless. Man Xingyun seemed to have detected and removed the thread for all the people in her alliance, which included Sun Jiaolong, Huang Yuan, and Fang Lijuan. Zhen Baiyu's alternative personality also detected the thread and removed it. Su Yan appeared to have sealed herself, Zhang Xian was basically dead, Jian Wushang was crippled, and Wang Wei never placed any on Su Shi. The only person remaining is Huafeng Huang, and Wang Wei already divined she would remove the thread after fusing it with Ao Tianyi's bloodline. Wang Wei wanted to try the same tactic now that he was more powerful. However, after Chu Luo revealed his method during the first dinner, these people have always been on guard against him. I came to get something from you, said Wang Wei as he continued to drink the tea, not minding the poison in the slightest. I theorized that Monk Wuxia must have given you an alternative method of proving the Tao. As partners who share a bond deeper than time and space, please share an alternative method to prove the Tao? If such a thing existed, I would sacrifice anything to get my hands on it, Feng Heng replied calmly. Feng Heng, no, Shifuyu, he'll call you this since I feel it will make us a lot closer, said Wang Wei with a gentle smile, making the latter squint his eyes. You're a man who has lived for a long time and is full of experience. Now ask yourself, can you survive from me at such a close distance? Do you think the little formations in this room are enough? Is that a threat? Shifuyu asked with a sneer. Confident, I see. Let me guess, you're very proud of your hiding capability. But, can you hide faster than I can kill you? Wang Wei did not release any aura, but the atmosphere became tense. Damn it, I've let my guard down, thought Shifuyu despite his face remaining calm. After surviving the previous catastrophe, and Monk Wuxia hinting that Wang Wei was an ally, he lowered his guard and met him in person. Feng Heng's original plan was to scheme against the latter with a rare poison that was now extinct in modern times. So, although he was prepared in case something went wrong, he still made the mistake of showing up with his real body. I currently have peak 3-leaf immortal strength, far from his 6-leaf. Shifuyu checked his divine C, and he had a silver law tree similar to Wang Wei. After many years of comprehending the Tao, this was his achievement. Shifuyu has never revealed his full power because that would require him to use both Taoist and Buddhist techniques, and he could not risk exposure. Many thoughts flashed across his mind as he pondered what to do. He cursed Wang Wei in his mind as he did not expect the latter to act in such a two-faced manner, changing his position so swiftly. Feng Heng never expected to become friends with Wang Wei but expected some sort of cooperation after the information Monk Wuxia revealed. This is a lesson to me. The closer I am to success, the more careful I need to be. Without hesitation, he handed a book titled, Merit Proving Tao Method. Wang Wei took the book with a smile, knowing he was bluffing as he would never attack Feng Heng. According to his analysis, only Supreme Unity or someone sent by him can kill Feng Heng in the entire Eternal Ascension world. And he would never try to be on Maitreya Buddha's wrong side when he is so weak. Luckily, he took a gamble and Shifuyu was unaware of his importance. Wang Wei briefly glanced at the book and his eyes lit up. I was correct. The method I created for my mother is possible. Now that you have what you want, you can leave. Don't be so rude. I've come here for many purposes. Don't push it. Even a rabbit will fight back when pushed too far, said Feng Heng, a dangerous light in his eyes. I'm serious. I'm also here to negotiate. Negotiate what? Negotiate my share of merit and incense from Buddhism. What do you mean by this? Monk Wuxia tasked me to help you spread Buddhism, and I want my share of the profit. Aren't you doing it to pay your karma? Yes. But it is not enough for me not to get a piece of the cake, especially since I've paid a great chunk by ensuring your safety. Plus, I'm a very valuable partner. Feng Heng frowned as he could deduct much information from this statement. He took a deep breath to calm down before asking, Tell me how you are valuable. Let me analyze things for you. I can tell you that you have zero chance of proving the Tao in this generation through the Heavenwell battle. I'm sure this is why the monk gave you the alternative method. Feng Heng frowned but did not comment. Your only option is to gather enough merit and exchange enough merit for a Heavenwell through being the leader of Buddhism. Unfortunately, you cannot spread Buddhism in the Myriad Emperor world because of the Tai Profound Gate. So, your only option is our world community's lower realm or another world communities. Wang Wei took a sip of his tea, letting his words marinate for a few seconds. After this incident, I'm sure the Tai Profound Gate will suspect you, and your hands will be tied for a while dealing with that mess, meaning you won't have enough time to accomplish your mission. Plus, I can tell you the Tao opening sect has almost taken control of most of our world community's lower realm. There is no way for that to be true, commented Feng Heng, and Wang Wei waved his hand to manifest a map showing thousands of spheres. Immediately, Feng Heng's face changed as he could tell these were world coordinates of the Myriad Emperor world community. Then Wang Wei continued, If you wait until someone proves the Tao to begin spreading Buddhism, I don't have to tell you the consequences. Feng Heng knew the consequences. Wang Wei waved his hand to show him another map, making Feng Heng squint his eyes. As you can see, the Demon Supremacy world community. They are currently in a war between humans and demons. With Buddhist monks having a natural restraint to demons, this is the perfect place to begin preaching and spreading. And since I have access to these worlds' coordinates, I want a share of the profit. Negotiations. You make it seem like I'm desperate and have no choice. I have options, rebutted Feng Heng. You do, nodded Wang Wei. The best option is to use the commerce hub and gain access to different world communities. However, do you think that these people will so readily give you access to their resources? Or do you think these world communities will not resist the invasion of a new force, especially one as powerful as a united Buddhism? Before their destruction, Buddhism existed across the endless void, but each world communities had separate but different factions. The only interconnection they had was the existence of Maitreya and other Buddha lords in the upper dimension. But now, once Feng Heng spreads the religion for the first time since the dawn of the eternal ascension world, all the Buddhist factions of the lower dimensions will be connected. They will be one faction with one leader, Feng Heng. Once people figured this out, they would never allow such a powerful faction to exist or spread in their respective worlds. And as someone who plans to control the endless void, Wang Wei would never allow Buddhism to prosper without him being at least the second voice of power in the faction. He needed to be able to restrain Feng Heng's power without using force while also taking advantage of this opportunity to grow exponentially. And do you have a solution to this problem? Asked Feng Heng. Yes. I can sneak into these worlds without being detected. Feng Heng pondered for a moment, analyzing the information. With the Tao opening sect being such an old faction, he would not be surprised if they had pawns scattered in some other world communities. In that case, I can give you 20% of the merit and incense. I want 90%. Feng Heng calmly sneered. You seem to have overvalued yourself. The absolute beginning magic still exists, so any form of Buddhism cannot be spread except for my Tao Buddhism. And even then, some special care is needed to remain undetected. Isn't this why you're asking me to share the profit instead of going over my head? That may be true, replied Wang Wei, still drinking the tea. But I can create a way to break the absolute beginning magic. You're not that important. I'm sure you can. But no matter how amazing you are, it's impossible to do so before proving the Tao. Shi Fuyu spent many years planning and only succeeded due to being at the correct place in time and because of the secret help of Maitreya. And don't forget, you would also need to completely convert to Buddhism before you could succeed. So, are you willing? Wang Wei did not answer as he knew the monk was correct. The position of the lower dimension Buddhist leader seemed unique to Maitreya, and it is not something an outsider like himself could hold without properly converting. Be that as it may, I have access to way more world communities than you. I will be doing most of the work and taking on the greatest danger. And while I do all this, you will be stuck in a quagmire of political nonsense. I think it's fair. You also have a point. I raise my offer to 40%, that's the highest I can go. 80% and am not going any lower. The two haggled back and forth, negotiating the correct percentage. However, Wang Wei did not budge on his bottom line of 80%, and Feng Heng could only offer 50% as his highest price. Never mind, said Wang Wei, tired of this back and forth. I'll change tactic. I'll make it my mission that you can't spread Buddhism before the heaven will battle. And after I take the throne, it will be easier to control you and get what I want. By then, you will be lucky if you get 1 to 2% of the profit. Feng Heng's face changed, and his body released a wrathful aura. However, before he could do something stupid, he received a communication talisman and one that seemed crucial. He used his divine sense to check and instantly lost more of his self-control. He finally received the news that Heavenly Tao granted the Era Sun title to Wang Wei. It gave everything to him, not given anyone else a chance. A part of Feng Heng's plan revolved around the destiny of the upcoming new era. He planned to gather as much as possible so that Buddhism would lead the new era, or at the very least they would be the ones who started it. And now the only way to achieve his goal was to kill this monster. If Heavenly Tao had divided the new era's destiny into parts, people could acquire more if they had defeated or schemed against the others. But now their only chance was to kill this monster. However, as someone with such high destiny, can anyone kill him? No, his pure luck was enough to ensure his survival, not to mention his strength. After learning this news, Feng Heng's thought process changed as he now had many other things to consider. Having a son of an era spread Buddhism was the perfect method to reduce the absolute beginning magic's counter. Feng Heng closed his eyes, reminiscing about that infamous day countless millennia ago when he helplessly watched the absolute beginning emperor massacre his fellow brothers and sisters. I've lost my way. My objective was to bring Buddhism back to the world. However, I've lost my original intention at the sight of worldly desires and benefits. My mind became impure, driven by greed and selfishness. So what if I do not have most of the profit? All that matters is the revival of Buddhism. Amitabha, muttered Feng Heng as his aura changed, becoming more peaceful and in tune with nature. With this enlightenment, his state of mind sublimated, making his future path of Tao Buddhism smoother. Sect Master Wang Wei, I agree with your proposition. You can have 80% of the merit and incense, as long as you spread Buddhism as far and wide as possible. This is the second monk who became enlightened because of my words or actions. Do I secretly have the power of the Bodhi tree? Thought Wang Wei, secretly speechless. I'm glad you've come around. Let's discuss the finer prints and sign a binding contract. The two then negotiated on the specifics before signing a grand Dao contract. Finally, Feng Heng gave Wang Wei a space ring with thousands of seeds. What are those? The luck-condensing treasure of Tao Buddhism is the Buddha world, and these seeds can grow unique small worlds that can block the power of the absolute beginning magic. This is the only way to spread Buddhism without any problems. I see. Could you give me the method to condense these seeds since they might not be enough? I'm sorry, but only the main treasure can condense them. If you want, you'll have to ask me. Wang Wei frowned as he realized this would require him to depend much more on Feng Heng for this mission. However, after pondering for a moment, he realized it did not matter since the latter might have a way of knowing which world he spread the seeds. As the leader, Feng Heng should have this essential ability. I should monitor these worlds closely to prevent Feng Heng from taking advantage of their resources. Wang Wei asked him for a few 100,000, but Feng Heng told him he was unprepared for such a large number. As of now, he could only give him 40,000 and Wang Wei accepted. After getting what he wanted, Wang Wei left the mansion to see his first business partner, Mu Lei. He talked briefly with him before visiting Xianxia, the divine race and co-inventor of the soul path. He even visited the barbarian siblings who appeared to have secretly converted to Buddhism. From his observation, Wang Wei knew a few Feng Heng secretly convinced a few individuals in this trial to convert. He guessed the latter planned to use these people as missionaries. However, Wang Wei believed spreading Buddhism in any heaven-will world so early was a mistake, especially through these heaven-chosens that many factions spent countless years and resources cultivating. After returning to his mansion, Wang Wei immediately entered a semi-cultivation retreat. He closed his eyes for a few seconds before opening them. It's still not working, he muttered. He tried to access the Eternal Ascension world through his soul network ability by secretly accessing the soul imprint of Ao Tianyi and Xiao Tiendi. Wang Wei shook his head as he decided to try again after he proved the Tao. Then he used the soul imprints he had just acquired from Mu Lei, Xianxia, and the barbarian siblings. He had no problem accessing the others' worlds but ran into trouble regarding Xianxia. The world he saw was entirely blocked, and he could not enter no matter what he tried. Forget it. Let's try the others. The final trial, gift bonus chapter. Thanks to Blood Ore for the gift, Wang Wei sent a projection to the ancient spirit world where the barbarian siblings came from. As soon as he arrived, he immediately noticed the dangerous surroundings. He was currently in a place where an intense winter ravaged the land. Not far from his position, Wang Wei saw a group of tall men, women, and children dressed in animal-made clothes. As they traveled eastward, the group led a herd of sheep, goats, cattle, and horses. Migration? Wang Wei used his divine sense to learn about these people's language and current situation from someone who appeared to be their leader. He learned this man was called Batu, and these mortals belonged to the Batu tribe ruled by the monk dynasty. According to the custom of this world, only one person worthy enough can have the name of the tribe, symbolizing their status and strength. Every few years, the 3-year winter arrives in their region, and under the monk Khan, ruler of the monk dynasty, all tribes must migrate to an area more suitable for living. Wang Wei spread his divine sense to the surrounding area and learned many things. The ancient spirit world is ruled by the barbarian race, while other races are the minority. This world is not friendly to mortals as there are natural disasters all over the entire world. Things like winter that last dozens of years, heat waves that would turn the most luscious forest into deserts, non-stop rain for years, rainstorms, thunderstorms, tsunamis, and myriad other terrible natural disasters. The mortals have adapted to the world by becoming nomadic societies that constantly move from one region to another. Meanwhile, cultivators will live in these severe regions and use the environment to temper their bodies. As such, body refining is very prominent in this world. Additionally, teleportation across regions is very difficult and reserved for powerful sects because of the abnormal weather. Space resources or abilities are precious in this world since most cultivators cannot teleport in the ancient spirit world until they become supreme. The situation subsequently results in animals and the demon race becoming the main form of transportation. In this world, having a good horse or demon ride is something to brag about. Wang Wei's projection teleported far away, trying to gather more information about this world. The most powerful emperor lineages of this world had 12 great emperors, while the second had 11, and it was the one the siblings originated. So, the 12 emperor curse exists, thought Wang Wei as he analyzed the information. Based on the history, he could detect that this world once had a 9 emperor curse after the Setsun tribe cultivated their 9th emperor. Then, out of nowhere, the Kutulan tribe began to rise, producing their 9th emperor soon afterward. The Setsun tribe then cultivated their 10th emperor, and a few other tribes also cultivated their 9th emperor. The situation repeated itself after the Setsun tribe cultivated its 12th emperor. With the existence of the siblings, Wang Wei can predict that the Kutulan tribe will catch up in this generation, maintaining the balance that Heavenly Tao desires. As for eternal emperors, the ancient spirit world had 4s, one from the Setsun and Kutulan tribe, the other from the most powerful human faction with 6 great emperors, and the last one was a loose cultivator. After getting the general situation of this world, Wang Wei checked the ancient spirit realm, a dimension where countless spirits resided. The spirits' level varied from ordinary animals to innate demons and fallen emperors who have become spirits. As soon as he entered this realm, Wang Wei's projection frowned. He sensed a gaze that even brought tremendous pressure on him. I was detected. And to give me such a level of pressure, it must have the power of a great emperor. After pondering for a moment, he did not go snooping and left. He headed straight for the nearest great thousand world in that community to check things out. He discovered the custom and environment were similar to the ancient spirit world. The creatures in this place could also access the ancient spirit realm. Could the ancient spirit realm be the reason for the uncontrollable natural disaster? Thought Wang Wei for a moment before focusing on something else. This world community is perfect for preaching Buddhism. Although the resources are abundant, the disparity between mortals and cultivators is too extremes. Cultivators use the environment to their benefit, while mortals have to constantly migrate, losing countless lives in the process. If there were a faction willing to help and support them, the amount of incense gathered would be astronomical. However, Wang Wei was worried about the ancient spirit realm as he felt something was wrong with that place. It could become a stumbling block in his plan. Let's try, but do it slowly. After making a decision, Wang Wei sent a projection to the Star Beast world. After spreading his divine sense, a slight surprise appeared on his face as he appeared outside of the atmosphere. A planet? He looked in the distance and he saw many more planets. He teleported over there. There were many races including humans, demons, spirit races, barbarians and many more. He saw planets the size of Earth, some as big as stars, and he even saw many bigger than thousands of galaxies. However, most of those appeared to be artificially created. In one particular planet that was extremely vast, Wang Wei could tell it was the body of a cultivator. A cosmic-based world. The advantage should be its vastness, while the disadvantage is the isolation of different planets, star systems and galaxies. However, the isolation is perfect for Buddhism to secretly establish a base. He went on to check some of the worlds in the lower realm, and their composition was similar, except way smaller. After getting the information he wanted, Wang Wei finally checked on his chat group. Mad King, the assassin, the doctor, the scholar, the butcher, and wannabe god had all become tier 6. Over the years, the group contacted each other less in a blatant attempt to reduce the effect the group or Lord of Karma had on them. However, they realized how useless this method was when the Mad King suddenly attacked wannabe gods' worlds, wreaking havoc in a sneak attack. Then the group became weary of each other, planning to protect themselves or attack others. Wang Wei did not spend much time with them but released a mission for these people to help spread Buddhism in their factions. And the reward was very generous and enticing. Afterward, he began to create other subgroups of the chat group based on the Heavenwell community. Wang Wei currently had access to a few communities to recruit people in large numbers. He divided the recruit into 2 groups. The first one was sovereign or rulers, people who controlled a large population. Wang Wei chose people who had rights to the throne but did not have power for myriad reasons, mostly political or military. He would help them sit on the throne in exchange for making Buddhism the main religion and allowing them to gather incense. The second recruited group were people with a high affinity with Buddhism, and they were the group he would grant the Buddha world seats. These people would become monks and practice Tao Buddhism. He also lured a few quasi-emperors into converting, making them serve as the protector of these new and weak monks. All these things took him 3 days to accomplish. On the first day he received a notification from Lord Spirit that the final trial would occur in a week despite the upper-seeded players leaving. Wang Wei exhaled deeply after accomplishing his task. The seed has been planted. Now all I have to wait for is the towering tree. He did not just spread Buddhism in these world communities, he also left his Fate Shadow Guards along with some other secret factions. And as long as he acquires more coordinates, his tentacles will continue to spread throughout the endless void. Of course, Wang Wei did not intervene in the Heaven-Will worlds. He did not infiltrate or leave any factions, it was too risky. Since he had time, Wang Wei returned home to cultivate his acupoints into the Turtle Defense Array. The idea of the Turtle Acupoints Defense Array is to condense a talisman that contains the power of the Sect's array. Wang Wei has to keep the talisman inside his Divine Sea. He can set up the array with his acupoints, and the talisman would be the primary power source. The Sect's formation could be moved, and Wang Wei could keep it inside his Divine Sea. But that would leave it vulnerable, so he had to use this alternative method. The downside of both ways was the fleshly body had to be of a certain level to bear an Emperor-level talisman or array, and not all its power could be mobilized. In just 4 days Wang Wei barely started learning this array. Regardless, he had to leave to return to the trial. Once everybody had arrived and taken their position, Lord Spirit spoke. The main theme of this final trial is longevity. Seeking longevity, The final trial is simple. Your mind will be sent to a mortal body. The setting will be a mortal world with little to no spiritual chi. Your mission will be to create a method of longevity. The ranking will be based on the person who can live the longest, said Lord Spirit. You said little to no spiritual chi. Can you be more specific? Asked Tong Ruobing. There was a vast difference between a world with absolute zero spiritual energy to one still having some trace of it, no matter how little. You can find out on your own. Any more concerns? No one said anything as they contemplated how to pass this trial. From the basic information provided, it was obvious that things would be more complex than stated. In that case, let's begin. The participants proceeded to the pagoda. When Wang Wei opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a rock-hard bed, wearing old clothes that had been washed too many times. He stood up from his bed and immediately saw how skinny and malnourished he was. Even when he was an orphan back on Earth, he was never this weak. Wang Wei slowly walked to a bronze mirror to see his reflection. It was his face instead of somebody else. Then, some information appeared in his mind, which simply stated he was an orphan in this village. The info also contained some basic information about the villager and its villagers. Wang Wei took a moment to ponder his next course of action. The first step was to decide whether this world had any spiritual chi and its quantity. This information would determine the method he would use next. Unfortunately, he could not sense anything as this body severely restricted the power of his soul. He needed to enter a deep state of meditation to sense energy. But with how weak his body was, he could die if he did so. The mind or spirit connects the soul to the body. If he entered deep meditation with his malnourished body, his fleshly body could not bear the process. I need some meat and nutrients, thought Wang Wei as he considered his options. Hunting would not work in his current state, so he decided to steal. There were a few villagers with livestock, so he targeted them. He memorized the layout of the village and the villagers' habits, like sleeping and drinking time. Then he stole some vegetables and a chicken from one of the neighbors to make soup. There were no spices including salt, so the food tasted horrible. I can't remember the last time I felt hunger, thought Wang Wei as he munched on a chicken leg. Ever since he began cultivating, he never felt the sensation of hunger. If he counted the time he spent listening to his ancestor preaching, he was now over 100,000 years. And the sensation was the first time in a very long time. It somehow felt nostalgic. He still had his desire for good food, but the Buddhist instinct for nutrients. Aging, sickness, hunger, and death are fundamental things defining a human. So, am I a human without these things? Wang Wei was not having an existential crisis about his identity since he did not care that much. He believed that since he still had his emotions and desires, and since he thought himself to be human, he was human. However, now that he had nothing else to do, he wanted to ponder this philosophical argument. Of course, once he finished stuffing his face and digested the food, he went to bed since he was tired. For the next month, Wang Wei became a thief at night while helping on the farm in the morning. Because of his quiet and helpful personality, no one suspected him when his thievery reached a point it could no longer be hidden. The villagers organized a night watch group to catch the thief, and Wang Wei offered a few opinions on better organizing things. Of course, no one caught him. During this month, he used a martial breathing method he knew to maximize the absorption of nutrients from all the food he ingested. As such, he could return to normal health in just 1 month. Wang Wei had to wear more oversized clothes to hide the changes in his body since he was no longer as skinny as a bone. And with a semi-healthy body, he could finally attempt deep meditation. Unfortunately, he did not have the environment to do so. In his current situation, if he was disturbed and forcefully woken up from deep meditation, he could injure his spirit and soul. And he did not feel it was safe to just barricade the hut he lived in since it was not soundproof. With the desire to be cautious, he spent another month digging out a hideout. Wang Wei took this time to build some muscles and allowed the scandal of his thievery to die amongst the villagers before they got the government involved. He took the time to go hunt since he only needed a bow and arrow, and for his new body to adapt to his previous skill. After building the hideout, he attempted his first deep meditation. Usually, Wang Wei could see the spiritual qi between heaven and earth with his eyes. And even if that was possible, it should only require a few minutes of meditation to sense it, or an hour at best. Unfortunately, he spent more than 4 hours before detecting something. That's how rare spiritual qi was in this world. With how weak spiritual qi is, if I nourish my body with it, I can only live up to 80 years. The energy of this world was so thin that no energy system Wang Wei knew could be used to begin the path of cultivation. And if he only used it to temper and nourished his body, he estimated he could only live a maximum of 80 years. In this world, the average lifespan is 40 to 50 years, so living up to 80 years could be considered achieving longevity. But it was not nearly as good for the trial. I'm sure there might be some herbs deep in the mountain that absorbed a large quantity of spiritual qi. But could I get my hands on one? For the next week, he searched the nearby mountain while hunting. Unfortunately, he never saw any spiritual herb. He also never encountered any animals with spirituality, which would also be a good supplement. Wang Wei then concluded that his luck in this world was average and subpar. I must create a cultivation system perfectly suited to this low-level world. Wang Wei had another option to build a science and technology civilization. Then, use genetic engineering to achieve longevity. But he knew the consequences and decided otherwise. Inside his hideout, he pondered deeply about his next step. Essence, qi and spirit. These 3 treasures are the essence of cultivation and the 3 fundamental paths to achieving longevity. If I follow the correlation between them, I could live a long life in this poor environment. An idea of the way forward began in his mind. Let's begin with essence. Wang Wei began to train his body in martial arts. He used his abundant knowledge to create the perfect exercise for his body. Training requires energy to support the Bodhi's evolution. And since he could not rely on spiritual qi, he found another alternative: blood energy. Animals' flesh and bones contain a large amount of blood energy based on their sizes. And through consuming them, Wang Wei acquired the energy his body needed to become stronger. Every day he would hunt in the forest with traps and his bow and arrow. He consumed the prey's flesh and trained in his martial art. In just 6 months, Wang Wei's body has the strength of 3 cows. He could smash a large boulder with 1 punch and fight a tiger with his bare hands. Unfortunately, he encountered another problem. He needed to consume the equivalent of 10 cows every day to maintain his training. Although blood energy was a form of energy, it was also the lowest kind with many impurities, making absorbing it extremely inefficient, even with martial techniques to optimize the process. And there was also the issue of impurities. Wang Wei had to spend at least 5 hours a day on the toilet, removing these impurities from his body. And since he was not a cultivator and expunged impurities through his skin, he had no choice but to use the toilet. With the time I spend hunting, eating, training, and shitting, I will never finish the essence refining technique. It did not take him long to realize the solution to his problem. Money? As long as he had money, he could cut off the time to hunt and cook, focusing on his training. Furthermore, with money he could also buy rare resources like 100-year-old ginseng, that are great for nourishing the body. It's like the ancients said, only the rich can practice martial arts. After coming to this conclusion, Wang Wei decided to leave the village to the nearest city to make some wealth. Seeking Longevity 2. Gift Bonus Chapter. Thanks to Punchtatic 5 for the gift. Xiao Wei, take good care of yourself. I will, Aunt Li. This is for you, said the middle-aged woman, handing him a little sachet with coins. Although it is not much, it should help you. Thank you. Wang Wei directly accepted, knowing she would insist and refuse his refusal. Furthermore, he knew she would not suffer from this slight loss of money. To repay the karma of the livestock and vegetables he stole, he would give a share of his hunt to the village while sharing some knowledge about agriculture, allowing the village to yield more in the previous reaping season. "Good boy," said Aunt Li as she liked that Xiao Wei was not like other boys trying to be modest. He knew when to accept help and refuse. Many other villagers came to bid him goodbye while also giving him some gifts. Mostly some money or items in their family they believed would bring luck and prosperity. Wang Wei thanked everyone before bidding them goodbye. Then he hopped on the caravan he had paid that would take him to Spiral Leaf City, a middle-tier city size-wise of the Great Lu dynasty. The journey took half a month and they encountered a few bandits. However, the caravan had trained bodyguards armed with weapons. Wang Wei observed the bandits and guards to see if there was any power system, mostly martial art. And there was. But it was nothing like training the body to increase strength. The system evolved around the moves or martial skills. The head guard and one of the bandit leaders were very adept at the weapons they used, and Wang Wei could detect they had spent years training. Of course, he did not come up with conclusive evidence as of yet since there was the possibility these people were not privy to this world's power system. After arriving at Spiral City, Wang Wei began to act. He chose this city because it was larger than the smaller ones, far away from the capital they could not easily reach, and it was a port city. The ocean was excellent for business. After settling in an inn, Wang Wei acted. There were 3 families with the most influence in Spiral Leaf City: Liao, Qi, and Yun. With his martial skills, he infiltrated these families' mansions to access their library. Knowledge was precious in ancient times, and he could barely get some information from the surrounding villages. And by reading these old and powerful clans' knowledge, he could analyze the overall situation of this world. "I guess I should have expected this," thought Wang Wei as he placed a scroll back where he found it. There was no cultivation or power system in this world, and as he previously observed, martial art was based purely on skills and practice. Extraordinary powers only appeared in the form of certain individuals born with inhumane strength. These people often become generals that can slaughter hundreds of soldiers on the battlefield. He also read of some people who ate weird herbs in the forest and became extremely powerful. Wang Wei sighed in disappointment as he could easily explain these phenomena. The people with inhumane strength are people born with divine strength due to their luck. At birth, they were lucky to absorb some spiritual qi nourishing their bodies. As for the people who became experts after eating herbs, that's even easier to answer. These people were lucky to acquire the rare spiritual herbs of this world. Wang Wei quietly left the Liao clan's mansion with the reaffirmed belief that he must rely on himself to achieve longevity. "If I want to make money, there are a few paths before me. The first is to become a scholar and use the government's power to acquire wealth. This path is too long and full of too much uncertainty. In this ancient times, a person could not become a scholar simply because they were talented. Scholars, especially ones from low backgrounds, needed to attend schools built by noble clans. And after years of serving them, they can get recommended for government positions. If only this world had the imperial examination, thought Wang Wei, even though he knew this might not help. Throughout history, the noble clans have also corrupted the imperial exam. The second path is through the military. With my strength, becoming a mighty general is not a problem. However, if possible, I would like to avoid large quantities of battles. Battles often injure the body. And with the scarce resources in this world, repeated injuries will lead to a decline in lifespan, which was contrary to Wang Wei's goal. So, that only leaves me with the commerce path. Wang Wei studied business in his past life and could create a successful one as long as he analyzed the needs and wants of this city. However, there was a problem. Backing. In this ancient time, doing any business without the proper backing will result in it being taken, or worse, killed. He could predict that if he created a successful business, the 3 families, the government, and a bunch of other people would target him. So he needed backing. The easiest one is to either use his charming face and marry one of the main branch daughters of the 3 families. But he did not dare. Or become an underling of the city's mayor, joining the side of the government. And there was no way he would do that. So he took the third option, create one for himself. And the method was simple and rude. He used his overwhelming martial prowess to conquer all the city gangs, both small and big. He thought a small group of elites his essence refining technique, to create a powerful force under him. Then, after stabilizing his power as a gang leader, he entered the business field. Wang Wei did not go for the obvious shipbuilding and transportation since Spiral Leaf City was near the ocean. The royal family banned shipbuilding out of fear of people creating private navies, and Wang Wei did not want to get on the wrong side for now. He went for the salt business, which was also outlawed. However, he knew this ban was not from the royal family but the result of a few powerful clans in the capital who had monopolies in the salt business. Since he was far away and had less scruple dealing with these clans than the royal family, which was still in its prosperity age, he did not mind slowly taking over the salt business. With his new method of refining seawater into salt and a better purification process, he rapidly swapped the surrounding cities' markets. And when some people tried to intervene, they were in for a rude awakening. Nevertheless, this was not all of Wang Wei's business plan. The next step was the casino and red light districts. Wang Wei revitalized these two industries. He added new games to the casino along with marketing tactics to get more people to participate. He did the same for the red light districts. In the brothels controlled by his gang, the women no longer sold their bodies but art. He taught these girls how to read, write, sing, dance, play instruments, calligraphy, and poems. People came to the brothels to witness these girls' talent, not for their bodies. Of course, it helped they were all attractive and had beautiful skin because of a herbal lotion he made, another business, after trying to create a herbal bath for his training. Wang Wei was a man who liked to do this well and thoroughly when he began something. So, he went above and beyond in his business path. He created roads that facilitated more accessible travel from other cities to Spiral Leaf. He conquered the surrounding bandits and turned them into an escort service. As long as merchants paid a specific price, they would be escorted without worrying about their merchandise being robbed. And when merchants realized it was guaranteed to arrive in Spiral Leaf City with their products, more of them traveled there, turning the city into a hub of merchants. And they were not the only people attracted. Many scholars rushed to this city, rumored to give birth to countless surpassing poems. Wang Wei had no shame in embezzling the famous poems from his past life. Plus, with his intelligence and experience, he could create many literary masterpieces. Copying them was easier. In just a few years, Wang Wei became the wealthiest man in the Great Lu dynasty, spreading to many fields across the nation. He had his hands on every business possible. However, he also ensured he did not have a monopoly on all of them to prevent people from rioting and to partner against him. As expected, he acquired the ire of many clans and factions. Unfortunately, everyone who tried to intervene in his business would not end well. Even the royal family suffered many losses after they attempted to deal with him. Of course, Wang Wei did not care about his abundant wealth as in terms of real value. His current worth was not as good as the pocket money his grandma used to give him when he was a child. Nevertheless, wealth served its purpose. With money and a large group, he did not have to hunt for meat for his martial art training. Furthermore, he had many people searching for spiritual herbs in every corner of the dynasty, using any means to acquire them. Bang! Wang Wei threw a punch, generating a small shockwave. The strength of 9 ox. Is this the body limit of a weak world? He shook his head. It took him 20 years and countless resources to reach the limit of tempering his body, making him 35 years old. And the result was 9 ox of strength, which was on par with the body refining second layer in the origin system. Thinking about how much time he spent on the toilet, Wang Wei felt it was not worth it. Luckily, after reaching a certain stage where he had complete control over his body, he could expel impurities from his pores. He also developed some cooking methods to reduce animal meat impurities. It doesn't matter. With the essence refining technique completed, I can live for 120 years. The next step is qi refining. He looked in the distance, thinking about the next step in his plan. Seeking longevity. 3. Wang Wei rode a horse to a city very close to the capital of Great Lu. His departure alerted many people, thinking he was heading to the capital. As such, he encountered a few assassination attempts in the process but dealt with them quickly. After arriving at his destination, he headed straight to a mansion he had built more than 20 years ago. The hired maids had cleaned the villa before his arrival, but the caretaker dismissed them before Wang Wei's arrival. As soon as Wang Wei stepped into the yard, he could feel his breathing was smoother, his mind clearer, and the air fresher. There was a tall and luscious tree in the backyard, and despite the fact it was fall, it still had all its leaves. There seems to be no problem with the feng shui formation, thought Wang Wei. With this world's low amount of spiritual qi and not having access to his spiritual power, he could not use runes to make formations. As such, he had to use feng shui methods of using the surroundings to set up formation and borrow the power of heaven and earth. Wang Wei calculated the perfect spot where spiritual qi naturally flowed in the entire Great Lu dynasty. Then he built countless cities for the formation using the current mansion as the core. The result was a powerful qi-gathering array to gather all the scattered spiritual qi of the Great Lu dynasty. After checking that nothing had gone wrong, Wang Wei went to a sealed room deep underneath the mansion. He locked himself inside before cultivating. After entering a deep state of cultivation, he could sense all the spiritual qi in the surrounding. After gathering for 20 years, there is so little, thought Wang Wei, who was speechless. He could swear Immortal back home passively breathed in more spiritual qi than this entire country. The environment is vital for cultivators. He could imagine how horrible it would be to live in such a terrible environment trying to cultivate. After shaking his head, he continued with his cultivation. He used the qi refining method he created to absorb and condense the energy in his dantian. After a few hours, he heard a loud boom and saw a small dimension above his navel. So small? Wang Wei decided to complain no longer, as this was not an issue of his Buddhist talent but the environment. And unfortunately there was nothing he could do about that. In his dantian he saw a gas floating. It was his new inner qi. Since I've been using a martial art theme, let's call it internal energy. He created this energy based on the true yuan he learned from Zhen Chaos World. However, it was of way lower quality. Low spiritual qi also means the laws of this world are incomplete, which leads to a lower power ceiling and many other restrictions, analyzed Wang Wei before continuing to cultivate. Using the remaining qi, he expanded his dantian while also increasing his inner energy. Then he checked his body. My lifespan has increased from 120 to 250 years old. And once I've completed this stage I could add more. Wang Wei did not leave his mansion as he focused on cultivation. After using all the spiritual qi, the process drastically slowed down, so he had to use alternative methods. With inner energy he could finally use some alchemy techniques. He refined the blood energy in meats into pills. With this method he did not need to eat 50 cows daily but turned them into a pill containing their combined condensed blood energy. Subsequently, he converted the blood energy in the pills into inner energy to continue his cultivation. Additionally, his business would keep sending him some rare spiritual herbs, and he would create qi refining pill to help him. As such, Wang Wei spent years in retreat, only leaving his mansion 3 times to deal with some people who had no eyes and tried to get rid of his resource-gathering business. It took him 15 years to fill his dantian before proceeding to the next stage of cultivation. The human body requires 5 elements and yin-yang to balance, and doing so can prolong life and achieve longevity. Wang Wei followed that philosophy by using his organs to generate 5-element qi and fusing them with his inner energy. The process took him another 15 years of non-stop cultivating, regardless of the loneliness and isolation of this world. After the 5 elements qi baptizement, Wang Wei's lifespan increased by another 50 years for a total of 300 years. So, he proceeded to the yin-yang balance by getting the energy he wanted from the sun and moon. Wang Wei initially wanted to create a high martial system based on star power. Regrettably, he could not sense any star power, most likely due to the laws of this world. He could feel the energy from the sun and moon, but his body simply could not bear the energy of these heavenly bodies in large quantity. He did a few experiments and people could not condense sun powers into their bodies and dantian. The pure yang energy would burn anyone to ashes. The sun went for the moon and pure yin energy as it would freeze people to death. He waited under the yards tree at dawn when the first sunlight appeared. He hurriedly used his method to catch the tiniest of yang qi. Instantly his body turned red, and an intense heat emanated from his body, charring his clothes. Wang Wei felt he would spontaneously combust and die. Luckily he swallowed a yin nature pill before his attempt, which reduced the effect. Wang Wei ignored the pain as he fused the yang qi with his inner energy, sublimating it to a higher level. Phew, he exhaled a hot breath. He checked his body and discovered he had lost 5 years of lifespan because of the yang qi damage. He was not surprised as he calculated he would lose more until he absorbed yin qi to balance his inner energy. After that, he will recuperate his loss and gain more. Wang Wei continued absorbing yang qi until he met the requirement. Then he cultivated at dusk to absorb yin qi until he achieved balance. And as his inner energy flew throughout every part of his body, it removed impurities while strengthening his flesh and increasing his lifespan. The process took him 20 years, meaning he spent 50 years in the qi refining realm, and that was only because it was him. If it was a normal person with ordinary talent or even above average channel, they might never fill their dantian. It's a shame I could not condense a core, thought Wang Wei. His previous plan was to condense his inner energy to sublimate it into a higher form. Unfortunately, due to the incomplete rules of this world, the process did not succeed. So, Wang Wei had to continue on his previously established plan. I need a break, muttered Wang Wei. He essentially spent the past few years non-stop cultivating. Although 50 years was nothing to him, he also wanted to enjoy himself a little. So, he left his mansion to visit his business and the surrounding cities. He even visited the surrounding dynasties since Great Lu was not the only one in this world. His paw had secretly reached these dynasties as he set up the Qi gathering formation to gather most of the Qi. However, he did not use them since he wanted to use them for the essence refining method. While Wang Wei enjoyed his travel, news and rumors about him spread throughout the entire world. And the rumor was that he was immortal. After all, he was now in his later 80 seconds, but his face had not changed from a teenager in his 20s. However, when people wanted to talk to him or make his acquaintance, he had already returned to his mansion to cultivate. Using his inner energy and reserved spiritual qi, he targeted his Naiwan palace to open his sea of consciousness. The process was tedious and lengthy, but he eventually opened a small space, gaining access to his spiritual power. In the cultivation room, Wang Wei suddenly floated in the air. He used his spiritual power as telekinesis to levitate. Unfortunately, he could only fly for about 10 minutes before running out. After shaking his head in dismay, Wang Wei continued to cultivate. He used his inner energy and remaining qi to expand his sea of consciousness and increase spiritual power. Phew, he muttered. At this rate, he'll never be able to condense my soul. He now had a lifespan of 800 years old, but he did not think it was enough to win this trial. While thinking about his next step, he suddenly sensed something and looked in the distance. He smiled. I guess I don't have to go myself. He left the retreat room and walked to the yard and waited. Less than a minute later, a young man walked into the yard. The latter instantly became shocked after seeing Wang Wei. World's richest man Wang Wei should be 103 years old this year, but he looks younger than me. The rumors were true through the young man as a decisive look appeared on his face. He knelt on the ground, shocking his entourage. Immortal, please help me. Seeking Longevity 4, Gift Bonus Chapter. Thanks to Grum for the gift, the young man's entourage wanted to stop him but feared offending Wang Wei. So they stood frozen, indecisive about what to do. Meanwhile, Wang Wei calmly looked at the young man kneeling on the ground. Your fourth prince, Kang Rong? It is the lowly one. Interesting. So why are you asking me for help? I have nothing to do with your royal family. Kang Rong gritted his teeth and said, I want to be sovereign. Your Highness, yelled his companions as they looked around to see if anyone heard. And despite not seeing anything, they were worried since these words could be considered treason and lead to their master's death along with all his retainers, them. Kang Rong ignored and continued. He understood this might be his only chance. And when speaking to someone as powerful as the world's richest man, he had to be direct to have an opportunity. I know, an immortal as high and mighty as you might not care about the affairs of the mundane world. But to me this is everything. You're wrong. After all, there is a reason I have so much wealth. Kang Rong smiled while remaining in his kowtow stance as he understood the meaning behind these words. He had a chance. Immortal Reverend, I will give you whatever you desire, as long as you help sit on the throne. Kang Rong had no choice but to use this extreme method. He had more than 40 brothers and sisters, but only 5 were eligible to compete for the throne, and he was one of them. Amongst all his 5 brothers he was the most qualified. He was more intelligent and had the best political, economic, diplomatic and military sense. He cultivated the best retainers to help him in court and even gained the support of many people in the dynasty. Unfortunately, his father hated him for some reason and did everything to reduce his power or give his brothers the advantage. Kang Rong could not understand why his father hated him so much. At first he thought because he was the product of a lowly maid. But his 8th brother has a similar background, and his father did not treat him the same. Recently, his father passed an imperial decree that essentially banished him to the borders, removing him from the competition. After that, Kang Rong thought about rebellion. Unfortunately, his father had absolute power in the empire. He easily removed Kang Rong's power and prestige, so he knew rebellion would result in his death. After pondering the situation for many days, Kang Rong concluded there was one person who could give him what he wanted. The world's richest man, Wang Wei. Only this man who controlled more than 70% of the world's wealth and an unknown army of martial artists with superhuman strength. So, without hesitation, he took his most trusted subordinate and traveled day and night to meet his legendary man. Kang Rong instantly knew he had made the correct choice after seeing how young the person was for his age. "You understand the consequences of making such a deal with me?" Wang Wei asked. "I do." He understood what might happen to have an immortal by his side. He might turn into a puppet ruler. Nevertheless, he wanted to take the risk. "Very well. Let's discuss things in the capital." Wang Wei waved his hand to wrap Kang Rong and his group with his spiritual power and flew to the sky, shocking the group. Kang Rong took a deep breath to ease the fear and excitement he felt from the sensation of flying and the awe he felt for Wang Wei's power. Meanwhile, his entourage almost screamed out of fear. Luckily, Wang Wei blocked their mouths. The capital was close to his location, so they only flew for a few minutes before arriving at their destination. If Kang Rong had looked closely, he would have detected Wang Wei's face was paler than before. The short soaring session while carrying 3 people and himself almost drained his spiritual power. However, it was necessary to show up and instill fear in Kang Rong, ensuring he won't do something stupid after he gets what he wanted and forcing Wang Wei to waste time and eliminate him. After returning to the capital, Wang Wei asked Kang Rong if he wanted to get the throne using the fast and ruthless way or the slow but more benevolent way. And he chose the latter. The next day, the king and his 4 other brothers became ill, and no doctors could do anything. Kang Rong began rapidly taking control of the dynasty's military and political powers. With Wang Wei's martial art legion, he was unstable. However, Wang Wei also used a secret method to prevent internal chaos and confusion. Then, after taking all the power, Kang Rong blackmailed his father to pass the throne to him rightfully. The king had no choice since his son had the only solution to the poison he was affected by. Finally, Kang Rong rightfully took over the throne. But he did not immediately kill his father. The antidote to the poison required constant doses to prevent death. However, the same could not be said for his brothers. The first thing Kang Rong did after taking the throne was given Wang Wei the title of national teacher before creating temples for him. There was a main temple in the capital with countless scattered over the dynasty. Wang Wei stood inside his temple looking at the sky. "This world's spiritual qi and law are so low that I cannot even condense qi luck." He could see a bunch of scattered invisible golden motes flying from different parts of the dynasty into the temple. "Even if I gather this entire world's luck, I could only increase my lifespan by 200 years. He shook his head before walking into a room where he saw a myriad floating white and red energy orbs. "I can still gather incense, but the quality is so low. Not to mention all the impurities." Wang Wei took the incense to refine it. He removed the impurities and used the remaining to accelerate the spirit refining. Meanwhile, under his orders, Kang Rong began positively changing the Great Lu dynasty. Wang Wei gave him a book containing detailed things he needed to achieve to bring a golden age of prosperity to the dynasty. He even funneled much of his wealth to help. The only thing Wang Wei asked in return was for his name to be revered in the dynasty and for people to worship him. And Kang Rong did a great job turning him into the revered immortal guardian of the dynasty. He did not hesitate to give him most of the credit for the social changes that happened in the empire. There is even a holiday to worship the immortal guardian. Today, Wang Wei opened his temple for the first time since Kang Rong's enthronement. He never left or met with anyone. If he wanted to communicate with others, including Kang Rong, he would use his divine sense. He opened the gate and 2 people walked in, an older man and a younger man. The older man looked at Wang Wei with complication in his eyes before kneeling on the ground, with his head directly on the ground, shocking the younger man. However, he also berated the younger man, forcing him to kneel, and after a moment of hesitation, the latter followed. "It's been 40 years since we last met." "Yes, immortal reverend, and you have not changed a single bit since then. The same cannot be said for you. You're now a dying old man." "It doesn't matter," replied Kang Rong. "I'm satisfied with my life." "So, you're here for your son. Are you here asking me to support him on the throne or asking for immortality for him?" "I knew I could not hide it from your divine eyes. I am here for both. People who sit on the throne cannot pursue longevity. Their greed and power are a recipe for disaster, and I don't want to create more trouble for myself," Wang Wei replied calmly. "If you want, I can teach one of your children a part of my inheritance, but it cannot be the one on the throne." These words surprised Kang Rong as he was prepared for rejection and the possibility of facing the immortal's wrath. "As you wish, sir." Wang Wei nodded his head before looking at Kong Rong's son. It's time for the dynasty to conquer this world. Follow your father's example, and you will be forever remembered as a wise sovereign in the annals of history. The young sovereign immediately became excited, ignoring the disappointment he had previously felt. Although he could not live forever, he was happy to pursue eternal glory. Kong Rong left with his son to prepare for the expansion. He was too old but could still provide some wisdom when needed. He also did not forget to bring another one of his sons to the temple. Wang Wei looked at the 13th prince before him and said, I will tell you directly. Cultivating immortality is boring, long, and requires hard work and dedication. But even then you might fail. Do you still want to walk this path? Yes, Sir Guardian. All right. I'll pass the essence refining technique to you. If you can cultivate it to a certain level, you can live up to 120 years old. Only 120? Can I be immortal like you? No. Why? Immortal cultivation requires too many resources. The more people who are walking this path, the less left for me. If it were not for the fact the essence refining technique only required food to cultivate, he would never pass it to someone else. So, regarding the qi refining that required some spiritual qi, no one in this world will know this method beside him. Oh, replied the young prince. Don't be disappointed. The chances are you will give up cultivating after facing the difficulties. Wang Wei's guess was correct. 3 years after this conversation, after Kong Rong's death, the young prince gave up cultivating. He hated the constant practice, the constant eating and defecating. Without his father forcing him, he gave up. Seeking Longevity Finale. Inside the Great Lu National Teacher's Mansion, Wang Wei continued his cultivation. As the Great Lu dynasty expanded its borders, improved people's lives and built more temples, he gathered more incense to help him refine his soul. The last time Wang Wei met Kong Rong, he was 143 years old and had spent 40 years with little result. And he finished the process when he was 330 years old. A few things in the outside world caught his attention during this time. Kong Rong's son, Kongda, who succeeded him and united the entire world, came to see him before his death. He wanted Wang Wei to give the royal family another chance at immortality, and he refused. Meanwhile, the 13th prince, who previously gave up on cultivating, came back asking for another chance. In his late 30s, when his body began to weaken, he had scared and feared death. So, he tried to practice now, but his body was old, his foundation weak after years of drinking and partying, resulting in feeble blood energy. So, when he tried to practice, he needed at least 10 times the effort for half the result. Fearing for his upcoming mortality, he ran back to the temple, asking for help for the immortal guardian. He tried to use the pity card, asking Wang Wei to consider his late father's last wish before his departure. Unfortunately, Wang Wei did not open the temple door or answer him. Soon after, he felt ill and died. As time passed, Great Lu remained prosperous, and Wang Wei's reverence kept increasing. However, one of the sovereigns was unhappy about someone being so loved and popular amongst the people, since he could easily incite a rebellion. He tried to do something, but Wang Wei immediately scared him by sending a message directly into his mind with his spiritual power. Unfortunately, the foolishness did not stop, as his successor directly rebelled against Wang Wei. He led the Great Lu's army to the temple. However, to all the people's horror, a humongous palm descended from the sky and crushed the sovereign before the people. This event was forever scarred in the annals of history because the people heard the immortal guardian speak for the first time when he said, "Making me waster so much qi." The royal family quickly gathered a new ruler and came to the temple for Wang Wei to decide whether he approved. After telling them it was fine and not to disturb him, he continued cultivating. Wang Wei's eyes were closed, looking at his soul. The thing was so weak that it could not survive under the sun for more than 30 seconds. It was so weak that he did not dare absorb even a ray of pure yang from the sun, so he had to use the yang energy produced by his body to nourish his soul. My lifespan went from 800 to 1,400 years. Now for the next part, the 3 flowers. He already had the method of condensing the 3 flowers of essence, qi, and spirit. However, he had to modify it a little to fit this world and his current situation. Wang Wei also used all the little luck he gathered from the world to accelerate the cultivation process. After condensing all 3, his lifespan reached 2,000 years old, but he discovered something. Limit. This world has a limit on lifespan, he thought while frowning. He could sense that he had hit a barrier on his lifespan, and nothing could remove that limit. He walked out of his room to a tree nearby. He placed his hand on it, and an absorbing force came out, swallowing something into his body. Absorbing life force does not increase lifespan. On the contrary, the impurities in the tree affected and reduced my lifespan. He frowned for a moment before proceeding to another room in the temple. He placed his hand on an altar and injected his inner energy. Despite his lack of appearance, Wang Wei cared deeply about Great Lu's expansion and participated in a significant way. He gave specific directions on where his temples would be built and how to do so. His action aimed to use the entire world as a feng shui qi gathering array. He then used all the spiritual qi for his cultivation. However, the array also had a purpose: to revive spiritual qi in this world and elevate it to a higher level. After activating the array, the world trembled slightly, but no one detected this anomaly. People noticed that all the temples scattered in the dynasty's territory began vibrating. This sudden change alarmed many people. So, throughout the world, mortals began to kneel and pray Wang Wei's name since he was the only immortal in this world, and this anomaly was probably the result of his powers. Wang Wei looked at the sky, waiting for something. Unfortunately, nothing happened. So, he stayed for a few days to even a month, but nothing occurred. So, this world is isolated. He planned to change the world, bringing back spiritual qi and, in turn, elevate the level of this world and break the limitation of his lifespan. He would also improve his cultivation environment. However, spiritual qi does not come out of anywhere. If he wanted to increase the quantity, he had to access the source qi space or convert one form of energy to another. He knew he could not do the latter, so his plan focused on the former. Wang Wei wanted to summon some unknown energy source from space and, after studying it, found a way to convert it into spiritual qi. Regrettably, it appeared that the trial took place in a specially created world that is heavily isolated. What should I do now? Without changing the world, no matter what he did, he could not increase his lifespan. However, Wang Wei also did not want to spend the remaining time doing nothing. I wonder if I could break into the other people's trial to plunder their worlds? Fantasized Wang Wei, even though he knew this would not be allowed. So, he shook his head to remove these fantastical ideas from his mind. Lord Spirit, can I leave the trial early? Wang Wei asked out loud. No, he received a reply a few seconds later. Why not? Lifespan does not equal how long someone can live. That was true. Lifespan was not an indication that someone would live exactly to that age. For example, someone with a lifespan of 10,000 years might die between 800 to 9,700 years old. The reason is that cultivators undergo many battles in their lives, leaving hidden injuries after healing. Furthermore, state of mind, emotions, and stress could also affect a person's lifespan. For example, someone with a lifespan of 10,000 years might die between 800 to 9,700 years old. In that case, can you get me access to my body? Why do you need that for? I don't want to waste time. I can use this opportunity to cultivate. Although Wang Wei was not in the supreme realm, where he did not need to access the laws of heaven and earth to cultivate, he had the law fragment from his physique as a replacement. Even if it was 1,000 times worse, it was better than nothing. Wang Wei only got an answer about 5 minutes later. The answer is no. Why not? That's a reasonable request. It is, but I just checked and it will take too much effort to accommodate you. So, continue to play by the rules. 1,600 years is not long. Wang Wei tried to argue, but Lord Spirit never answered. So, he had to find something else to pass the time. After pondering for a while, something came up. I just had an idea. Why don't I use this experience to create a supplementary cultivation technique? The purpose would be to allow someone to reach the limit of a mortal lifespan. 1 yuan epoch. The origin system sacrifices lifespan for battle prowess, and many other cultivation systems sacrifice something for another. However, he could create a supplementary cultivation system that allowed people to reach the limit of their lifespan. Although he did not need it, such a technique would greatly benefit the Dao opening sect. Especially the old monsters who sealed themselves before running out of lifespan. They would all kill for such a technique. Even if I don't get my hands on the deceiving heaven longevity art, this technique will slightly compensate for it. With excitement, Wang Wei entered seclusion to cultivate. For this life limit art, he did not have to start from scratch, as he could use his experience in the trial as guidance. Wang Wei stimulated the environment of the myriad emperor world in his mind to create this technique. The first step is also essence refining, except he used the mildest methods to temper the body. The purpose of essence refining is not to temper the body to become powerful, but to be extremely healthy and leave no hidden injuries. As for the qi refining stage, he wanted to create a special qi that focused entirely on nourishing the body and increasing lifespan. He wanted to call it longevity qi, but considering longevity resources and the name might be too grand, he decided on permanent qi. Wang Wei did not have the time to create the spirit refining since the trial ended. When he opened his eyes, he was an older man with long white hair and a long beard. And as expected, with his knowledge and never leaving his compound, he lived until 1992 years old. When he opened his eyes, he was sitting cross-legged in a room inside the pagoda. He sighed deeply before leaving along with the others. Final Trials Ranking Gift Bonus Chapter. Thanks to Grum for the gift. Wang Wei flew to his seat in the middle of the square, and not long afterward, Lord Spirit appeared with a noticeable smile on her face. Let's not waste time and get started. I will show the ranking for this trial from the lowest to the highest. In other words, from the person who lives the shortest time to the highest. I will only rank the top 12. Lord Spirit waved her hand to the number 12 with a few dots. She appeared to be building suspense. A few seconds later, Xianxia's name appeared, making her face pale in the fifth-seated player's seat. An image appeared to display the things she did in the trial. Xianxia did a basic breathing exercise to absorb spirit qi, but she focused on nourishing her soul and spiritual power. Afterward, she created a method of using karma for deduction or calculation. With it, she found a spirit turtle and raised that turtle with the few spiritual herbs and resources she had before turning it into a herbal soup. The spirit turtle soup raised her lifespan to 250 years, and after years of nourishing her body with spirit qi, she lived up to 300 years. Lord Spirit did not stop and continued to the 11th place, Jianghu Hua. Her method was radical from the beginning. As a demon, she has little to no affection for humans. So, her path of longevity involved absorbing life force from people. Unfortunately, her actions were effective and counterproductive. Human lifespan, as energy or power, was murky and full of impurities. And even when she tried to purify them, her body and soul were severely damaged, and she only lived up to 312 years. The 10th place was the brother of the barbarian siblings, Taoyui. The first thing he did was use spiritual qi to temper his body. Then he used his potent military prowess to conquer the world. As he watched this part, Wang Wei thought the latter would use a method that used luck. But he was wrong. Taoyui used his authority as a sovereign to gather a harem of beautiful women, which he then used to practice a yin-yang cultivation technique with them, nourishing his body and increasing his lifespan. He lived to 350 years old. The 9th place was Feng Heng. The Taoist priest used a similar method to Wang Wei, absorbing pure yang energy from the sun and pure yin energy from the moon. He created a technique identical to Wang Wei but focused solely on qi refining. Feng Heng used yin and yang qi to sublimate his inner qi and nourish his body. His result was the same time as Taoyui, 350 years. Wang Wei secretly shook his head as he could see the priest did not use his full ability. The concept of essence, qi, and spirit is deeply rooted in Taoism, so he did not think of it. According to his speculation, the Tai Profound Gate might be one of the few sects that also created a method of condensing the 3 flowers on the crown, and the other was the 5-element balance palace. The 8th place was Mu Lei, whose approach was strange. He created a mass grave and buried himself. He made a method that turned him into a zombie by absorbing the ghostly yin qi released by the graves. The technique was clever but also had a significant flaw. Without enough spirit qi and specific rare resources, the yin qi eventually corroded his body and soul, leading to his death. He survived until he was 387 years. Zombie? Why do I feel like I will encounter something annoying related to zombies? Thought Wang Wei as he watched Mu Lei's trial. However, he soon focused on the next participant. The 7th place went to Kudelin. Her method involved conquering the world to help her gather resources. Then, she created a pool of blood energy and sealed herself inside with a special method. By absorbing the energy, and because she had to use little to no vitality in the sealed state, she survived for 400 years. I'm only 7th, complained Kudelin. Being sealed was a very uncomfortable feeling. It was like she was both dead and aware simultaneously. Time seemed to slow down because of how she perceived it. Her mind was in a murky state where she could not think carefully, yet she was completely aware of her mind and existence. In conclusion, it was a disgusting feeling to experience, and she could not understand how the people who sealed themselves for countless generations survived. She could foresee the experience was even worse for them. The sixth place was the drunk swordsman Ji Lanfang. His plan's first step was cultivating the sword while absorbing spirit qi. He focused on training his spirit and soul through the sword. After making some achievements, he began a journey through the world, spreading his legend as a swordsman. He even spread some basic body refining techniques to make martial art more prosperous. Then Ji Lanfang abandoned his body and fused his soul into his sword, becoming the sword's spirit. The sword became a legend in the martial art world since anyone who got their hands on it became a peerless swordsman. The only downside was they would die early, but most people who pursued fame and glory did not care about death. These swordsmen died young because Ji Lanfang absorbed their spiritual power to nourish his soul in the sword. He also guided them in the process, creating the legend that the sword could create master swordsmen. Through this method he lived for 430 years. Lord Spirit announced Tong Ruobing in 5th place. Her plan involved creating artificial spirit qi using mortals as the energy source for her worldwide feng shui array. Unfortunately, she also succumbed to the issue of impurities and died after living 550 years. The 4th place was Chu Luo. After seeing his method, Wang Wei's mouth almost twitched. Chu Luo turned himself into a cyborg. The method he used was to replace the failing parts of his body with artificial components that he created. For example, Chu Luo would build artificial organs or muscles through weapon refining if they began to degenerate and showed signs of failure. And since the artificial parts had spirit qi and he nourished his soul, he did not have to hurry about his body affecting his lifespan. Unfortunately, his soul could not be replaced, so he only lived for 624 years. The 3rd place went to Liang Shixian. He used a basic method since it involved his race as a god. He conquered the world and had everyone worshipped him as a divine being. Then he abandoned his body to live as a pure soul creature. After dealing with the impurities in the incense and low spirit qi, he lived for 687 years. At this time, most knew that only 2 people were in the lead for the first position. And Lord Spirit made sure to play the dramatic as the second name took so long to show up that many people became annoyed and impatient. Eventually he revealed Su Shi as the 2nd place winner. Her method involved fusing her mind with a mountain, becoming a mountain spirit. And because mountains had longer lifespans than swords, she lived for 720 years. Her spirit could not support her body without spirit qi or other resources, so she died from the backlash. Finally, Lord Spirit revealed Wang Wei's position as number 1. The other participants watched as he methodically created a system ideally suited for himself and the environment. They saw his ingenuity and ability to assess the situation and respond accordingly. They saw how he could use anything to his advantage to achieve his goal. They saw how he could maximize profit while being highly efficient. They saw the demeanor of a Tao overlord. The participants saw what would happen to them if they were stranded in a low-level world, weakened beyond measure and without outside help. They would struggle to survive, while this man would probably find a way to prosper and even get out of the situation. After all, while they tried to live as long as possible, the Tao overlord reached the limit of the world. And if it were not in the trial, he would have broken that limit and maybe lived as long as heaven and earth. The vast difference made a few people sigh in desolateness, but many also increased their fighting intention. They would not acknowledge they were inferior so quickly. They would learn from this situation and strive to improve. And if they could never catch up to this man's back, it was alright since he was an excellent motivation to keep moving forward, never faltering. Now that all the trial sections have been accomplished, it's time to announce the final winner, said Lord Spirit. And for many of you the answer is already obvious. After totaling the results of all the previous sections, the final winner is Wang Wei. Congratulations. The square became quiet only for a moment before Ji Lanfang said, Congratulations, fellow Taoist. You deserve it. Thank you. Don't forget to have your father contact me. I want. Tong Ruobing and a few others congratulated Wang Wei, and he replied respectfully. However, he could sense that Chu Luo next to him was not happy. However, the latter did not say anything, seeming to accept his loss. Gu Xian's deception Dao. So, you want to take from my hands? Thought Wang Wei as he analyzed Chu Luo's reaction. He was fine with that outcome as well. Meanwhile, Lord Spirit seemed happy that no one had an objection, and she did not have to justify his choice. Tomorrow you can accept the inheritance. Wang Wei nodded and went to rest. The next day he met with Lord Spirit before the talisman. You seem excited, commented Wang Wei. Of course I am. My master has been waiting for a worthy inheritor for too long. And once he succeeds, I can finally reunite with him, replied Lord Spirit, his joy and excitement exuding from his tone and eyes. That's good for you, Wang Wei replied calmly. He followed Lord Spirit into the pagoda, where he found himself in a brightly lit room, with a bunch of torchlight with white flames surrounding the room. In the middle was an altar with candles. In front stood a middle-aged man with long black hair tied in a bun and a long black beard that was exceptionally trim. His hair and beard had streaks of white hair, accentuating his peaceful aura with a touch of wisdom. Master, said Lord Spirit before kneeling and kowtowing. Lord Gu Xian, said Wang Wei as he cupped his hand and bowed. Gu Xian smiled and nodded in salutation. He then gazed at Lord Spirit. You did a great job. It was my honor. You can leave. Prepare to leave with me. Yes, master, replied the odd spirit, walking out of the room with exciting steps. Then Zhu Xian looked at Wang Wei and smiled. Another unparalleled genius appeared in the myriad emperor world. Your accomplishment will definitely surpass your ancestor. You knew my ancestors? Not personally, but I've heard of their legend. Well, enough about these pleasantries. Let's talk about my inheritance. My longevity art is nothing special besides allowing its ability to create insurgent and live longer. I'm sure there is no tangible benefit to a heaven chosen such as yourself. However, it means a great deal to me. It is the result of my long cultivation, hard work, and dedication. As such, I wanted the best and most gifted individual to excuse, said Wang Wei interrupting him. Is there something? This is too cliché. Pardon me? I mean your obvious attempt at stalling so you can take over my body. The entire situation is a little too cliché and overdone. I am afraid I do not understand? Asked Gu Xian perplexed. I'm sensitive enough that the moment I walked into this room, I could tell I had entered a soul form, and the entire room was my sea of consciousness. So, please remove the charade, you can't deceive me. Wang Wei chuckled to himself as he thought using the word deceive was clever. Unfortunately, Gu Xian could not appreciate such a great joke. His demeanor changed, turning gloomy. His gentle eyes became similar to a snake hiding in the bushes in ambush. As expected. As a Tao overlord, you still surprise me even after overestimating your capability. It was not as hard as you expected. As a person who practices the Tao of deception, I have to say you're not very good at it. What did you say? It's true, replied Wang Wei. The first mistake you made was your reputation. After learning about your history, it's normal to conclude you were a snake who feared death above anything else. You were selfish and were not above using disgusting methods for your success or survival. Now, why would I trust someone with such a reputation? Veins appeared on Gu Xian's face. This is not how you should practice the Tao of deception. If I were you, I would have deceived the entire world and crafted the perfect personality. A good reputation, even a saint-like one, is excellent for doing anything. People will trust you more and your words will have more weight, perfect for deceiving people. I would deceive myself by crafting a secondary personality with sane-like morality, always doing good for the people in the world. And when I wanted to deceive someone or something, I would switch to my real personality. As long as you deceive yourself in the world, it should not be a problem to deceive heavenly Tao. But I'm confused about how one could deceive grand Tao thought. Isn't that thing omnipotent? Forget it for now. Well, that's how I would cultivate deception Tao, not the low-level method of conning people left and right. At this point, Gu Xian was seeing red. He was usually very calm and calculated, as he needed such a mindset to deceive people effectively. However, if there was one thing he was proud of, it was his Tao. He took something that most people in power would scoff at and elevated it to an art, to a Tao. Yet, some snot-nosed brat is preaching to him about his own Tao. What made the situation worse was he made some excellent points. Do you want to know the other mistakes you've made? Asked Wang Wei with an innocent face that made people want to punch him. They'll tell you. The trial itself was an anomaly. At first, I thought it was because of the whole deception motif you were following. However, each section was detailed and tested something specific, meaning you had strict requirements. Yet, the rules, especially the points and seeded player token system, made absolutely no sense. It was like you did not want participants to know who would inherit your legacy. But then I thought deeper. I asked myself, what is it that someone like you want? Why set up this trial? The answer came after I divided the essence of your personality into two traits, survival and longevity. You dare to claim you know me? Tell me if I'm wrong. You're a man who fears death very much, hence why the first draft of your longevity art involved increasing lifespan. However, you achieve your goal of becoming immortal after becoming a Dao ancestor, never having to worry about lifespan. Asked Gu Xian, raising his guard. Seriously? You know I'm a Dao overlord and I spent all this time telling you this information. For what reason would I do that? Do you think things will go smoothly for you? Gu Xian's face changed for a moment before he regained his bearing. I can already guess you will say something stupid like in front of absolute power, all plots are useless. Gu Xian almost choked since that was the exact words he was going to say. The whole point of the Supreme Outlaw trial is to overcome the odds. Plus, you don't even have the absolute advantage in power since you had no choice but to sacrifice most of your cultivation for this ceremony. So what? My soul still has some of the quality and power of a Dao monarch. True. That's why I need to use some drastic means. Purple chains appeared on Wang Wei's body before they broke, falling to the ground. And what Gu Xian saw afterward almost made his soul scared to death. Inheritance acquired, gift bonus chapter. Thanks to Gavin the Grape for the gift. Gu Xian watched as the weak mortal before him turned into this massive purple cloud-like creature with a terrifyingly large mouth with razor-sharp teeth. The spiritual pressure released by the creature sent shivers down his spine, making his soul unable to move. Then he remembered a legend he had read about ancient times, especially during the middle stages of the Second War of Origin. The Myriad Devourer, he almost screamed. Myriad Devourer? This name seems to resonate with me, said Wang Wei, his voice booming throughout space making it tremble. Then he no longer wasted time and went for the kill. No, no, screamed Gu Xian as he tried to escape. Wang Wei opened his mouth trying to swallow him. A flash of light emanated from Gu Xian's body, but Wang Wei ignored it and continued biting down. Crunch. He chewed something for a moment before muttering, "Escape?" He could tell he did not swallow all of Gu Xian's soul but took a significant piece. So he decided to go after him to finish the job when Wang Wei suddenly felt something. His body was on the verge of explosion. His flesh could not contain his soul, so he hurriedly placed the seal back and attended to his injury. Of course, he did not forget to notify Ancestor Wuxia to be on the lookout for Gu Xian's remains. Meanwhile, after leaving the pagoda, Gu Xian's soul was pale and on the verge of collapsing. Damn it. How could I be so unlucky? How could this guy be related to the Myriad Devourer? If it was before, he could have sold this information to the parasites for an excellent price. But in his current state, if he showed up in the upper dimension, he would not survive for long. Now is not the time to be distracted. I need to act swiftly, there is still hope. Gu Xian looked toward one of the mansions and headed there. He ensured to hide his aura since he knew these participants had Dao protectors, many of whom were insurgents. Gu Xian first headed in the southeast direction before stopping. Then he gritted his teeth and changed direction to the southwest. He soon found himself before a mansion with a formation. As the creator of this trial, he had some control over the entire small world and used that power to bypass the formation. He headed directly to the room where he sensed the most extraordinary presence. Inside, he saw a young man in deep cultivation. He could tell this person seemed to be waiting or preparing for something and wanted to get in the past state beforehand. Chu Luo, it is you. Gu Xian did not hesitate to enter Chu Luo's sea of consciousness, accessing his soul. Ji Gu Xian? Asked Chu Luo, his face suddenly changed as he thought of something. He reacted swiftly to activate his power. Regrettably, he only saw Gu Xian waving his hand to manifest 4 chains that bound his arms and legs. Chu Luo resisted by mobilizing all the power of his 9-extremity foundation, but it was useless. Despair overcame him as he watched Gu Xian walk before him with a weird symbol on his palm. When the latter's palm was only a few inches from his forehead, Chu Luo's heart sank as he knew the fate awaiting him. He would die, his body possessed by that vile old monster. His life flashed before his eyes, and all he could think about was his myriad of regrets, especially for his parents. He thought he would never see them again, telling them how much he loved and appreciated what they did for him. He would never repay their kindness by ensuring they lived a life of pride, richness and joy. Chu Luo struggled more fiercely. He did not want to die. Unfortunately, it was useless. Swish. 2 white lights appeared next to him. And from them emerged 2 handsome individuals, a man and a woman. Father? Mother? They looked at Chu Luo and smiled. With a wave of the man's hand, he removed the soul chains binding his son. Luo, you know what to do. Chu Luo ignored the tears in his eyes to create a soul-swallowing pot. Then his father and mother used their energy to power up the pot. Meanwhile, Gu Xian knew the situation had gone out of control. In his current state he could not deal with an emperor-level threat. He immediately tried to run away, but another power locked him in position. And before he could think of a countermeasure, Chu Luo's pot suspended above him and swallowed him. He tried his best to resist, but Wang Wei had weakened him to an unimaginable level. After a few seconds of resistance, the pot swallowed him. Chu Luo did not care about the final result. Instead he looked at his parents. Mother, father, how are you here? We left some means to protect you in case something went wrong during your reincarnation. Chu Luo lowered his head, ashamed. Thank you for saving me again. You don't have to thank us, said his mother as she caressed his head. You are our pride and joy, we are very proud of you, added his father. Yes, we are proud of you and all you've accomplished. Not long after saying this, the two began to vanish. It seems our time is short. Mother, father. I know you're worried about our injuries. But you don't have to. Not long after ascending, we had a fortunate encounter that allowed us to heal. We are doing great in the upper dimension and waiting to reunite with you. Really? Of course. And luckily that day will not be long. The two finally disappeared, and Chu Luo cleaned his eyes after staring at their disappeared spot for half a minute. He eventually opened his pot, discovering two things: a mass of pure spiritual power and a book called Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art. Meanwhile, Wang Wei finally opened his eyes in the pagoda and immediately sensed something. He felt the latter's death by using the karma he had just made with Gu Xian. Chu Luo? It seems your luck has run out. Wang Wei then focused on Gu Xian's memories he acquired, including the Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art, the latter's step-by-step of creating the scripture, and his understanding. Moreover, Wang Wei discovered many memories about the upper dimension that he found necessary. The first one was about Emperor Kong. The latter became an Empyrean not long after ascending. The reason was he discovered an immortal tier-time secret realm, and because of his diplomatic abilities, he spread the concept of the Academy throughout the Eternal Ascension world by coming to some compromises with the 7 parasites and the 2 sons. No one knew how he convinced them, but he did. With all the merit gathered, he joined the list of the few individuals who became an Empyrean in only over 3 yuan epochs. 3 yuan epochs? I can easily deal with that record. According to his calculations, if all his plans worked, he would become an Empyrean in a few million years, even before the next generation of the Myriad Emperor world. Meaning Wang Wei will probably be the youngest Empyrean in the Eternal Ascension world, one that is less than a yuan epoch. News about Emperor Kong's cultivation was not why he focused on this information. Gu Xian theorized that Emperor Kong secretly funded the revolution against the parasites. Although he had no proof, he believed in his analysis and gut feeling. The other important formation Wang Wei received was about parasites. Gu Xian analyzed these people in great detail, and Wang Wei paid attention to some of the latter's observations since they could be helpful. The first one was about Time Eater, the most powerful of the 7. He was a paragon with 99% control of Time Grand Dao Source and 1 step from reaching the peak. Time Eater was a paragon during the ultimate taboo but did not participate for some reason. Gu Xian believed that Gu Xian was the secret mastermind behind the 7, besides the 2 sons who used 7 Cauldron and Twin Flower as proxies to monitor and control the group. Time Eater was the one who suggested they usurped the entire world and ruled the era. The second important piece of information was the relationship between the Undead Phoenix and the 5-Feather Phoenix. Undead Phoenix was a pseudo-eternal emperor during the Incense era. Based on his talent, he should have long reached the peak of Paragon and participated in the ultimate taboo. However, something happened after meeting a young 5-Feather. They had a relationship, and something happened between them which resulted in Undead Phoenix being stuck in the Empyrean realm for too long, making him miss the ultimate taboo. Although these two are now on the same side, Gu Xian analyzed there was probably still animosity between the two. The third valuable information he learned was the possible existence of a hidden 8th moon. Gu Xian was pretty confident that this was the parasite's hidden trump card. Finally, he focused on Earth Emperor. According to Gu Xian, this man might be the most ambitious of the 8 and the one he was most weary of. Human Emperor, Earth Emperor, Heavenly Emperor. Wang Wei squinted his eyes as he felt the Human Emperor was planning something with the Earth Emperor. And the title of Heavenly Emperor will be important. Wang Wei then focused on the Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art. He felt this scripture had so much potential, but it also made no sense. The Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art. The information Wang Wei received confirmed one of his predictions regarding the fate of the Heaven Devourer Emperor. After being exiled to the Eternal Ascension world, a group of emperors from the Myriad Emperor world were not too receptive to his actions that almost destroyed their homeworld, and took matters into their own hands to deal with the traitor. They banded together and besieged him, destroying his body, soul, and Tao. Regrettably, these people did not have the ability to erase him from history since Wang Wei knew very well of the Heaven Devourer Emperor's existence and accomplishments. If the Heaven Devourer Emperor has possessed Mo Xingyun, many things will make sense. But a few more questions will also be raised. Wang Wei shook his head, placing these thoughts in the back of his mind. He then focused on the Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art. He felt this scripture had so much potential, but it also made no sense. A few hours later, he had a basic understanding of the scripture. Now it makes sense. The concept of deception as Tao always bewildered him, especially when it involved deceiving Heavenly Tao or Grand Tao to access the Grand Tao source. He knew that Grand Tao was the highest authority of the Grand Tao source, while true Heavenly Tao and normal Heavenly Tao were essentially employees. Grand Tao was the only omnipotent and omnipresent existence, or nay omnipotent and present. So, how would someone like Gu Xian deceive it into accessing the Grand Tao source? Even if Wang Wei thought of the problem on a smaller scale, how did Gu Xian deceive Heavenly Tao to extend his lifespan? In terms of power level, Heavenly Tao was equal to a second-class emperor. Okay, Wang Wei admits this part was slightly believable, but the access to the Grand Tao source that made this technique an insurgent made no sense. Fortunately, he found the answer. The entire Chaos universe was like a video game, and Grand Tao was the artificial intelligence that controlled the whole server. As the thing with the highest authority and power, it has rules and regulations that it must follow, one of which is that all things in the universe can be a Tao, including deception. So, once a person cultivates deception Tao and reaches a high enough level, when they touch the domain of deceiving heaven and earth, Grand Tao will give them a pass and allow the deception, even if it was fully aware the player was lying to it. Nevertheless, Grand Tao still gave parameters and limits to this deception, guidelines that all players who use deception must follow. This is why Gu Xian could deceive the Grand Tao source that he was an emperor, thus becoming an insurgent. This is why he could even deceive Heavenly Tao to expand his lifespan. Gu Xian took things too far, muttered Wang Wei. Gu Xian pushed the boundaries of Grand Tao's restrictions too far, losing most of his luck in the process. Adding to that, his emotions and desires resulted in him coming to his end in the lower dimension. This is a lesson for me. Always be aware of your emotions and desires, and do not let them control you. Wang Wei knew most plans fail at the last moment because the schemer cannot control themselves right before the final moment of success. The same rules applied to Gu Xian. If he had possessed someone like Ji Lanfeng, Mu Lei, or even the female players, he most likely would have succeeded. However, his greed and ambitions got the best of him. Of all the players in this trial, he and Chu Luo were the people who had a 99% chance of becoming Eternal Emperor. Meanwhile, the others could only be said to have a 70 to 90% chance. Because of his greed and personality, Gu Xian did not want to take any chance. He wanted guaranteed success. This technique still has some value, muttered Wang Wei. The Deceiving Heaven Longevity Art involved deceiving heaven that they were another person once their lifespan reached the limit, granting them another life. The restriction is that the cultivator has to start from scratch and recultivate, and the deception could only be used 9 times. As for the insurgent aspect, to gain control of the Grand Tao source, a unique ceremony is required to cultivate where a cultivator has to sacrifice something to Grand Tao for the deception of controlling the Grand Tao source and becoming an insurgent. The price of the sacrifice oftentimes limits the person's level of an insurgent. For example, if a Tao ancestor wanted to achieve the strength of a third-class emperor, they would need a minimum of 5 emperor weapons as a sacrifice, and their comprehension of the Grand Tao source has to be at least 20%, meaning it was not a one-to-one exchange. Moreover, the insurgent part no longer functioned after reaching the Tao ruler realm since Gu Xian did not come up with other methods to increase its power. He once tried sacrificing even more powerful treasures for Grand Tao to allow him to become a tier 11 insurgent, but it did not work. Nevertheless, this is a scripture with a lot of potentials. Wang Wei knew this scripture would shine after he proved the Tao. The benefit that it was a longevity scripture granting him 1 extra life was worthy of it. However, the real value was that he should be able to deceive heavenly Tao after he proved the Tao, allowing him to accomplish many things. And when he becomes a paragon, he should be able to deceive true heavenly Tao, unless it is on the same level as the two suns as he theorized as a possibility. And one day this technique might prove useful when he can stand at the same height as Grand Tao. If I play my cards correctly, I might be able to use this technique to hide from the parasites after I ascend. Wang Wei knew he would be enemy number one after ascending. And as he is still determining whether he will be able to fight paragons in the Empyrean realm, he might need to hide for a while. And this scripture could be the method he uses. After going over everything, he finally exited the pagoda, where he saw Lord Spirit waiting for him. Gu Xian used some methods to control the spirit, so now she was loyal to him. Gu Xian left most of his treasures in the upper dimension as resources for when he ascended. However, he left a few valuables in the pagoda, including 2 insurgent chis that could create first-class Emperor strength insurgents. He wanted to have 2 loyal people, slaves, protecting him during his cultivation journey and ensure nothing went wrong. Now these things would serve to increase the Tao opening sect's foundation. Go send the participants away, ordered Wang Wei as he prepared to refine the pagoda. There were not many valuable resources remaining, including the tempering chi. However, it was a great artifact to temper disciples and even selected them. Furthermore, he could still use the understanding section for a while before it also ran out of power. It should be enough for Wang Wei to reach the peak of the Saint Realm as fast as possible. 3 days later, the participants left one by one. Wang Wei exchanged communication talismans with the friendly ones, wanting to keep a watch on some of them. Then he exited the pagoda, preparing to take the entire miniature world. Unfortunately, someone did not leave. "What do you want?" "I want to fight you," replied Chu Luo. "What?" "From what I know, you should have also gotten your hands on the inheritance." Chu Luo frowned as his mind flashed back to that incident. He remembered that Gu Xian seemed severely injured. Now he understood the reason. "I want to know who's better between us." "Competitive, I see." "I agree, but no destiny involved." Chu Luo frowned for a moment before agreeing. The two then went inside the pagoda and fought. More than half an hour later, the two exited. Chu Luo gave Wang Wei a deep look before leaving his insurgent Tao protector. "What was the result?" asked Wang Wuchang, who magically appeared. "I technically lost." "Oh, how come?" "He has 3 root strength, but I only have 2 root. Although he spent close to 200 years in the trial, only 3 months passed outside, and his order incarnation was still confronting heavenly Tao. His overall strength has not increased much." "But?" asked Wang Wuchang. "My final strength is 4 root, so I could have used the future Buddha self to borrow the strength of my future self, but I did not do that." "Why?" "I see a vision or divination of the future. Chu Luo will reach the 4 root strength after using the spiritual power he got from Gu Xian. And after losing to me, he learned something from our battle and created a way to achieve 5 root. Instead, they waited for Miscellaneous One's deduction, hoping the kid would last long enough so they could arrive in time. "How long is this going to take?" asked Sword One a few seconds later as she wiped the blood from her swords after finishing the battle. "Something is interfering with my calculation." Bang! The space rippled and something came out. And everyone's face changed as soon as they saw what it was. After condensing his divine altar, which was in the shape of the Temple of Heaven from his past life, Wang Wei condensed his understanding of nothingness into a core or jewel and inserted it as an ornament in the temple. The power of intangibility oozed out of the jewel and fused with the temple. Immediately Wang Wei could see the difference. His divine altar was now in a semi-permanent state of intangibility, meaning it was almost impossible to destroy. As Wang Wei watched the red jewel in the temple, his eyes lit up. He knew after proving the Tao, great emperors would undergo a sublimation process where their cultivation and foundation would nourish their bodies and strength. As a result, things like the energy inside their bodies, law altars, law trees, and Tao fruits will be transformed by the power of the grand Tao source and turn into abilities or power of the emperor. For example, someone like Wang Wei has more origin essence than his peers. After the grand Tao source nourishment, his origin essence will wash over his body and grant him some power. Like an increase of 0.2% grand Tao source regarding power. The nourishment will also grant him an increase in battle strength after considering his silver law tree and his fleshly body. This nourishment is why great emperors have a different level of strength after proving the Tao, even if they have the same percentage of comprehension. After the nourishment, this nothingness core should make it easier for me to enter the void stage. Wang Wei did not care much about protecting his divine altar and law tree since these things would vanish after proving the Tao and would no longer be a weakness. He just wanted to prevent any trouble in the mortal stage of his cultivation. However, he cares about the benefit of his nothingness Tao. After nodding in satisfaction with this new discovery, Wang Wei continued his cultivation. He condensed his law seed before cultivating it into a law tree. Then he noticed another advantage. He could bless some of his laws with the power of nothingness to bless them. For example, he could bless his destruction Tao with the power of nothingnessness, making it even more deadly. Before now, he always had to separate his nothingness Tao from the others. Finally, they could intersect to some level. Wang Wei stood up from the ground and cracked his bones. He walked out of the cultivation room while calculating his time in retreat. 300 years, not that long. He took out a token and checked out some information he needed to take care of. Nothing of significance except Li Jun and Yan Liling had left their retreat and were traveling the world together. Suddenly, someone appeared before him. Answers? Wang Wei paused as he remembered something, making him sigh. "You can call me Elder Sword," said Sword One with a smile. "Thank you. I can tell he meant a lot to you." He did. Wang Wei does not have many mentor figures in his life. I like the one you write about cultivating Fate Tao. Although I know it's based on you, I still enjoyed reading it, especially since it was not a harem. It's one of my best works, but am not very satisfied with the beginning. It's not that bad. Anyways, it gets way better later on. You should write more in the same style. However, I want a female protagonist that is similar to me. Alright. However, have you tried writing yourself? I did. Let me see. No. Why not? Because I don't want to. Common. You know it'll pester you if you don't show it to me. Fine. Wang Wei read through her novel. I understand why you did not want to show it to me. You're a terrible writer. You want to say that again? I finally found something you're not good at. Wang Wei could tell her writing had no problem per se, but her plot, world building, creativity, and character designs and development were so bland. You want to sleep alone tonight? I'm sorry. But there is nothing wrong with being bad at something. Says the boring and perfect man. I'm sure there is something I'm not good at. I just haven't found it yet, replied Wang Wei with a smug look, and Wu Hong almost slapped him into the moon. Whatever. Go write my novels. This empress needs to be entertained. It would have been better to condense his domain into a small area around him as protection. Although this tactic requires talent, Sun Jialong could do it after practice. His action showed his lack of battle IQ and the fact he had just entered the Saint Realm and did not take the time to cultivate or practice. This is what happens when someone focuses too much on foreign aid, neglecting cultivation and individual strength. Wang Wei walked before Sun Jialong's corpse, and when the latter revived, he placed his hand on his head to forcefully read his memories and fate line. It was not the first time he witnessed Sun Jialong's life. After the Heaven-Chosen selection trial, he had read the latter's fate line. This time, however, he decided to be more detailed and not miss anything. He wanted to find any connection Sun Jialong had with the human emperor. Nothing, he muttered as he dropped the body on the floor. A few seconds later, a desperate Sun Jialong revived, his aura immensely more powerful. So, only 6 lives, commented Wang Wei as he sensed the latter would perish for good this time. And despite all these boosts, your strength is still nowhere near the immortal venerable level. A frown appeared on his head. The human destiny sword only showed up during rare times when the world needed it. I can conclude it appears in this generation because of the change in the era, and the human emperor chose you for the same reason. However, why are you so weak? Could it be he did not foresee that the power ceiling in this era would be such a high amount Heaven-Chosens? I told you, I'm not the human emperor's pawn. Is that so? Then let's see. Wang Wei clenched his hand into a fist and punched. Bam. Sun Jialong tried to block with the demon destiny sword, but it was to no avail. Luckily for him, an unknown and mysterious power emanated from his body, sending Wang Wei flying away. Here you are, he groaned as he got up. That power was on par with one root Dao ancestor. So, was the human emperor planning on interfering with this generation's heaven-will battle? Many things started to add up in his mind while also gathering even more questions. These people usually should not be able to influence the heaven-will battle. But things might be different with the situation of true heavenly Dao. The human emperor should know one root Dao ancestor strength is not enough for Sun Jialong to win the final battle. So, what is the point of his actions? Although he only recently achieved this level of power, Di Tian was here since the beginning, and the latter should know what the 9-extremity foundation was. Unless his backhand was only to protect Sun Jialong in case of an emergency. The clear conclusion is that Sun Jialong's objective is not related to the heaven-will battle but the whole karmic position of humans, Earth, and the heavenly emperor. More reason to kill him. The heavenly emperor position can only be mine. According to his divination, the first step only required him to win the heaven-will battle in the myriad emperor world at a certain point. So, he waited until now, but there seems to have been a hiccup. After pondering for a moment, he denied the possibility of wrong divination. He used a great treasure gifted to him by Hongjun, and knowing the latter's realm, he doubted there would be an issue. The human emperor sensed that Wang Wei was responsible for eliminating his pawn. So, he calculated again to determine his next step. Let's just wait. Let's focus on acquiring the Earth Emperor position first. Unlike the Heavenly Emperor position, which would require him to do a lot of work, the Earth Emperor position was a ripped fruit ready to be picked. Known Truth, Gift Bonus Chapter. Thanks to Drius X for the chapter. Wang Wei went to the Western continent in the Mo clan's domain. Of course, because of his previous rampage he was not welcome in this place so he had to hide his identity. A month passed and Mo Xingyun was nowhere in sight. Wang Wei then decided to take a more proactive method. He contacted one of the Fate Shadow Guards with a high status in the Mo clan and had them find an excuse to send her out. This plan worked, but Wang Wei had to wait an entire 6 months before she actually left. And a few times he sensed this weird method trying to find danger to be exact. He had to use many techniques to hide effectively. Luckily, his patience was soon rewarded as Mo Xingyun left the clan. Once she arrived at a destination, a few domains from her clan, Wang Wei finally intercepted her. Cautious, aren't we? Apparently not enough, replied Mo Xingyun calmly. Should I call you Mo Xingyun or Heaven-Devouring Emperor? Why would you call me by my ancestor's name? She rebutted. I have to say your method is truly wonderful. No matter what technique I use, I cannot see any signs of body possession. Even your bloodline appeared normal. That's because your assumption is wrong. Mo Zhongyan. Then, how do you explain the anomalies? Why is it do you know things you should not know? I don't have to explain anything to you. True. Anyway, after confirming the Heaven Devourer Emperor died miserably after many people jumped him, I've already labeled you as his means of revival. And that is enough for me to remove your existence. Wang Wei punched with all the power of his main body. Boom. The area around Mo Xinjian twisted as 10 small vortexes that resembled black holes protected her by swallowing the force of that punch. She was intact. 4-leaf strength and a terrific control of the Devour Dao, commented Wang Wei. His attack was on the level of 6-leaf, yet Mo Xingyun still swallowed it despite the fact it should have been over her capacity limit. And the reason for that is she has an unmatched speed for swallowing and refining anything she devoured. Her ability would be nothing even Wang Wei could do, even if he had cultivated the law of devouring. Should I be delighted for your appraisal? You should. However, I'm somewhat disappointed. Oh, and why is that? I can't sense the power of 9 Extremity Foundation from you. That's not something anyone can achieve. True. But you're the Heaven Devourer Emperor. I am not. With your understanding of existence, you should have used the unorthodox way. Your words literally prove that I'm not the Heaven Devourer Emperor, rebutted Mo Xingyun, trying to think of ways to get out of the situation. She pondered ways of escaping and surviving this encounter. No, I'm missing something, replied Wang Wei as if he was thinking out loud.